Leader, I can confirm that the live stream has now started.
Thank you, Steve. Mittentag, good morning. Welcome to this virtual meeting of Cornwall Council's Cabinet. Before consideration of today's business, I will outline the protocols for the meeting. Today's meeting is being live streamed to the public via Microsoft Teams and is also being recorded. When members are speaking, they may choose to use their video. If the Council's live stream fails during the meeting and we cannot share the proceedings, I'll adjourn the meeting so that access can be restored. If the issue cannot be resolved, I will halt the meeting and the remaining business will be concluded at a future date. If a member experiences a technical issue, I'll adjourn for a short period to try and re-establish their connection. As I call members to speak, I'll remind you to switch on your microphone. If for some reason you cannot be heard, the Democratic Services Officer will advise you. Votes will be taken by a roll call and the result announced by the Democratic Services Officer. Where a member has declared a non-registrable interest, a disclosable pecuniary interest, or an interest by virtue of a trade union membership in a matter, they must leave the virtual meeting. Their departure will be confirmed and they will be invited to rejoin the meeting at an appropriate time. To confirm the procedure for today's meeting is that Cabinet members who wish to speak on an item should indicate by typing an X in the chat box, and members not on the Cabinet who wish to speak should also indicate by typing an X in the chat box. So an X in the chat box, everyone, rather than hands up, to make sure that I can see the right order and see everyone. Thank you. So before we start today's business, I will ask the Democratic Services Officer to confirm all Cabinet members are present. Thank you.
Sir. I will now call each member's name. Please confirm your name and electoral division. Councillor Jeff Brown, the portfolio holder for Transport.
Yeah, Jeff Brown present. I represent Newquay Central.
Thank you. Councillor Tim Dwelly, the portfolio holder for Culture, Economy and Planning.
Yes, I'm Tim Dwelly, Cornwall Councillor for Penzance East. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Ethorne-Gibbons, portfolio holder for Customers.
Good morning, Mike Ethorne-Gibbons, representing Laddox and Clementon St Arr.
Thank you. Councillor Julian German, the leader of the council.
Morning, Julian German, Roseland Electoral Division.
Councillor Edwina Hannaford, portfolio holder for Climate Change and Neighbourhoods.
Good morning, Edwina Hannaford, divisional member for Lew West, Lansallas and Lanteglos.
Thank you. Councillor Sally Walken, portfolio holder for Children, Wellbeing and Public Health.
Good morning, Sally Walken, councillor for Liscard East.
Thank you. Councillor Andrew Mitchell, portfolio holder for Homes.
Hello, Andrew Mitchell. I represent St Ives West. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rob Nolan, the portfolio holder for Environment and Public Protection.
Good morning, Rob Nolan, representing Truro Redanic. Feels like University Challenge, doesn't it?
Thank you. Councillor Adam Painter, deputy leader of the council and portfolio holder for Resources.
Good morning, everybody. Councillor Adam Painter, councillor for Launceston North and North Petherwin.
Thank you. And Councillor Rob Rothschild, the portfolio holder for Adults.
Yeah, good morning, Councillor Rob Rothschild, division member for Camelford.
Thank you. I confirm that all portfolio holders are present. I can also confirm that the following officers are present. We have Ms Kate Canale, Chief Executive, Ms Tracy Langley, Chief Operating Officer and Section 151 Officer, Mr Phil Mason, Strategic Director for Economic Growth and Development, Ms Helen Charlesworth May, Joint Accountable Officer for Public Health and Care, Cornwall Council and NHS Kernow, Ms Meredith Teasdale, Strategic Director for Together for Families, Ms Sophie Hoskins, Strategic Director for Neighbourhoods, and Ms Melanie O'Sullivan, the Monitoring Officer. Thank you very much, Leader.
Thank you. So agenda item number 1 is apologies for absence. We have none, all of Cabinet being present. Agenda item number 2 is declarations of interest. Does anyone have a declaration of interest to declare, to make? No, in which case I'll move on to the minutes. Agenda item number 3, the meeting held on the 4th of November, pages 5 to 44, so including the confidential minutes. So these are for accuracy. Does anyone have any matters to raise in accuracy for the minutes? No, in which case I will propose and Deputy Leader will second. Democratic Services Officer, if you could take the vote, please.
Thank you, Leader. And please confirm you vote for, against, abstain. Councillor Jeff Brown.
For.
Councillor Tim Rowley.
For.
Councillor Mikey Thorne-Gibbons.
For.
Councillor Julian Durman.
For.
Councillor Edwina Hannaford.
For.
Councillor Sally Hawken.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Andrew Mitchell.
For.
Councillor Rob Nolan.
For.
Councillor Adam Painter.
For.
And finally, Councillor Rob Rotchell.
For.
Thank you. I confirm all members have voted unanimously. Thank you very much, Leader.
Thank you, Louise. So the next item is item 4, leaders' announcements. Earlier in the year, we held a minute's silence for those that had died during the pandemic. And as we approach the end of the year, we again reflect on all of those who have died this year. My sincere condolences to those friends and families who have lost loved ones. Whilst this year has been hugely challenging, we, Cornwall Council, have lived our values, continuing to listen closely to our communities and work with them to support our businesses and use the resources available to us wisely. The pandemic has been difficult for us all, but it has also been inspirational, seeing how we, councillors and staff, residents, community groups and businesses have pulled together to support one and all through such turbulent times. Now there is light at the end of the tunnel. Vaccinations have begun with a rollout plan over the coming months. We all know we must keep following the public health guidance while the process is carried out, but there is an end in sight. Our public health team have carried out sterling work, giving clear guidance and carrying out enhanced tracing, which has helped to keep us safe. It is, of course, a team effort, but Rachel Wigglesworth has provided calm and effective leadership throughout, and I want to take this opportunity to congratulate her on becoming our Director of Public Health, having held the post in an interim capacity through the pandemic so far. Congratulations, Rachel. I would also like to congratulate Cornwall Housing for winning the Promoting Partnerships and Collaborative Working Award at the Homeless Links Excellence Awards 2020 this week. This year's awards specifically recognised work by homelessness services during the COVID pandemic, and with hundreds of entries from all over the country, it is a huge achievement to have been picked up one of the 6 top prizes. The commendation for the award stated they won for the range of partnerships developed while supporting 11 people, 11 porter cabins in Truro through government's Everyone In initiative. Cornwall Housing came together with the council, various charities and services, community organisations, the police and others to keep residents safe and well, overcoming challenges from food shopping and cooking to prescriptions. They also worked with the Eden Project to set up classes to gain a horticultural qualification. Their person-centred and holistic partnership approach successfully engaged people to stay in their accommodation. Whilst there has obviously been focus on the pandemic, other work has continued, and we are again shortlisted for the Association of Public Sector Excellence Award for Tackling Climate Change, which we've already won previously. At today's Cabinet, with the COVID-19 Economic Recovery Plan, we look to the future, supporting residents to gain new skills and investing in low-carbon technologies to both create jobs and tackle the climate crisis. We are also looking to attract investment into Cornwall from within the UK and the rest of the world. And whilst there is uncertainty posed by Brexit and the pandemic, and no doubt more significant disruption to come, Cornwall Council will continue to do all that it can to support our residents and businesses. Looking outwards, I'm pleased to report a productive meeting with the President of Brittany last week, Monsieur Loïc Chesnay-Girard. We shared our experiences in terms of COVID-19 impact and economic recovery, as well as our devolution ambitions. There is a will on both sides to increase cooperation between Cornwall and Brittany, with agreement to develop a memorandum of understanding in the new year to establish our continued commitment to work together on various aspects of our economy, including but not limited to agriculture, tourism, trade, renewable energy and fishing. Cornwall and Brittany will meet again in the new year to discuss the expanding of our cooperation further. Cornwall and Cornwall Council will continue to be outward-looking, welcoming and working with our friends and partners around the world. I hope that during the festive period you get some time for quiet reflection and enjoyment. And for those that are working over Christmas, I hope this comes soon after. The new year will be challenging and we will need to keep following the public health guidance. But as we can see on today's agenda, for example, with improvements to supporting residents in need and improving air quality, there is hope for the future. Nadelic Loan have Bliven Nerf down. So we move on next to questions from the public. Agenda item number 5. So the first question is from Mr. P. Lightfoot of Carnan Downs. Mr. Lightfoot isn't with us, so I'm going to read the question on his behalf. What plans are being prepared or in place to support mass rollout of COVID vaccinations, and how will this be communicated to the residents of Cornwall? Councillor Hawken, if you could respond, please.
Thank you. Following approval to use the COVID-19 vaccine programme led by the NHS has been moving at great pace and on an unprecedented scale for the country's biggest ever vaccination campaign. The NHS is only at the beginning of a process that will take months to reach 30 million people or more. There have been considerable logistical challenges to overcome, not least given the need for very careful storage and handling the Pfizer vaccine, the only one so far approved. The NHS nationally, regionally and locally are trying to customise delivery of the vaccinations to local communities to make sure that the vaccine reaches everyone based on priority groups set out by the Joint Committee of Vaccination and Immunisation, the JCVI. This started with the over 80s, care home staff and residents and at-risk health and care workers at the Royal Cornwall Hospital Trust's vaccine hub on Wednesday. Next significant step will see GP-led vaccination centres taking their first patients in the week beginning 14th of December. You don't need to ring your GP, and if you're invited, please don't miss your appointment. Please be patient as the NHS works through its lists. The NHS will get to everyone on the priority list, contacting them directly when it's their turn. The NHS and us in public health would stress that in the meantime there continues to be an overriding need for people to focus on the hands space guidance, because it'll be many months before the vaccine has a significant effect on our vulnerability across all parts of Cornwall. We expect the NHS to update people across Cornwall when there are significant developments via the media, websites, GP surgeries, briefings, social media, and through its links with partner organisations and communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawken. So, the public questions, the second, third and fourth are all in relation to the A39 Camelford bypass, to which Councillor Brown will respond. The second public question is from Mr. C. Blackburn of Camelford. The 2017 report recommends a Hgv route trial, brackets 13.1.1. SOBC dismissed this, citing safety. However, HGVs are advised to divert along this route in the summer before approving the slow value for money scheme, destroying an SSSI, valuable farmland and beautiful countryside forever, should this trial be conducted as a viable alternative. Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you, Leader, and I'd like to thank Mr. Blackburn for his question. A temporary heavy goods vehicle diversion trial was one of the recommendations of the 2017 high-level options assessment report. This report also recommended pursuing funding opportunities to progress the bypass scheme as the long-term solution to address the air quality issues in Camelford. The designation of the A39 as part of the Department for Transport major road network at the end of 2018 subsequently presented that opportunity. The Hgv trial would have been an expansion of the current advisory Hgv routing that had been employed for several years during the high season, whereby northbound large vehicles are directed to use the B3266 and Slaughter Road to rejoin the A39 to the north of the town. This would have involved local road widening and provision of 11 passing places on several sections of the existing diversionary route to allow two-way use of Hgvs. What started as a simple idea for a trial now involves significant construction costs and long lead-in times for acquiring third-party land for passing places. Furthermore, there were concerns raised over a number of issues: significant increased heavy goods vehicle flows on the minor roads on the diversion route, and the level of compliance with the restrictions, given that Hgvs would be required to travel approximately 2 kilometres further on the route that would have involved a significant amount of stopping and starting to give way to Hgvs coming the other way. Further investigation was undertaken by the environmental health team by modelling the impact on air quality of removing various proportions of Hgvs from the town centre. This study identified that articulated Hgvs contributed around 13% of the emissions responsible for air quality issues in Camelford. The highest proportion of emissions came from diesel cars, 32%, followed by vans, 23%, and buses, 15%. This work concluded that even removing all of the Hgvs from the town centre route, a very optimistic scenario, will only have a very minor impact on addressing the air quality management area within centre of Camelford. Using the 2016 data, the impact of removing all Hgvs was still shown to exceed 40 milligrams NO2 threshold. In the light of these issues, alongside the emergence of the major road network funding opportunity, it was decided that resources will be better directed to pursuing the long-term solution of the bypass. Despite the recent improvements in air quality, this is still the preferred solution detailed in the clean air strategy prepared by the environmental health team. The proposed scheme will remove 80% of all traffic from the town centre, addressing the air quality issues and providing the opportunity to regenerate the high street alongside the much wider benefits in terms of journey times and resilience of the A39 major road network. Also, to pick up on one further issue highlighted in the question relating to the SSSI, the scheme includes a 120-metre viaduct that will span the River Camel, the SSSI and the SAC, with just a single bridge pier being constructed within the designated area. The development of the road scheme will be carried out in line with all the latest environmental and technical guidance, with any negative impacts addressed through biodiversity net gain policy and managed in line with the construction environmental management plan. An environmental impact scoping report will be submitted early in the new year as the first step in the planning process, setting this out in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown, for your response. The next question, public question number 3 from Mrs. T. O'Brien of Camelford. Housestone is situated at the end of the bypass. It has a bottleneck at either end where 2 lorries cannot pass, already causing some congestion. What measures are in place to stop increased air pollution and detrimental health impact to villagers from increased and constant flow of traffic? Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you, and thank Mrs. O'Brien for her very sensible question. At the western end of Housestone, the A39 is constrained in width over a distance of approximately 60 metres by properties in close proximity to the road. A speed limit on this section is 30 miles per hour, and the narrow section is identified by appropriate traffic signs and lane markings. Large Hgvs need to negotiate this section carefully and give way to each other when 2 meet at this pinch point. This is a long-standing issue that was raised again in the 2020 public consultation and was subsequently considered by the project team. To extend the main scheme to include a bypass of Helstone would involve significant additional works and associated construction costs that could not be justified to the Department for Transport. However, the outline business case does include provision in the scheme budget for a series of complementary measures. The main focus of these measures is the centre of Camelford, but there is also scope to investigate further traffic management measures for Helstone to reinforce the 30-mile-per-hour speed limit. These could include improved gateway features, the installation of vehicle-activated signs at both the eastern and western ends of Helstone, both of which will reduce vehicle entry speeds into the village. This issue has also been flagged with the Council Road Safety Team. If the main scheme is approved to proceed, further detailed investigation would follow in the next phase of the design development, with any proposals included in a pre-planning consultation and implemented alongside the main scheme. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. And Mr. J. Howe of Camelford can't be with us either, so I'm reading his question. Why, in this financial crisis, is this expensive project being pursued? A far cheaper and already proven option is available by installing width restrictions at either end of Camelford and HGVs using the diversion route currently signposted. Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you, Leader. A hat trick of very sensible questions. Thank you, Mr. Howe, for yours. As I outlined in my previous response to Mr. Blackburn's question, the Hgv Diversity Trial was previously considered in 2017 as a potential measure if there was no chance of the bypass scheme coming forward. The situation changed in 2018 with the designation of the A39 as part of the major road network. That presented the opportunity to bid for Department for Transport funding. This change in situation, plus the issue with the delivery and escalating costs of the trial, alongside the subsequent modelling of impacts on air quality that showed very little benefit in removing just HGVs from the town centre, led to the decision to focus resources on progressing the bypass scheme that would have much more positive impact on air quality and provide strategic resilience of the A39 as part of the major road network. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown, for those responses. So public question number 5 relating to Crescent Kerno. I understand Mr. C. Donathan from Caharrock is with us. Welcome, Mr. Donathan.
Thank you very much, Leader. A question, please, to the Cabinet member. Can they confirm who is responsible for the maintenance and the clearing of the stainless steel bins at Crescent Kerno, and why 2 of these bins have been out of order because of what looks like vandalism for so long?
Thank you, Mr. Donathan. Councillor Nolan to respond, please.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Mr. Donathan, for your question. Arrangements to maintain and service these bins have been impeded for a number of reasons, and we recognise this is not the standard we would like. The continued occurrence of antisocial behaviour in the area, despite additional security measures, has unfortunately resulted in the damage beyond repair of 2 of the bins following deliberate acts of arson. The bins continue to be targeted with arson attempts, and given their proximity to Crescent Kerno, the damaged bins will be removed and not immediately replaced to reduce the risk of further arson attacks. Further bins may be temporarily removed if antisocial behaviour continues to target them, but in the interim, the Economic Growth Service will work with colleagues in waste services and property services to improve the management regimes in place.
Thank you, Councillor Nolan. Mr. Donathan, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Thank
Please.
you. Mr. Nolan, thank you. The Cabinet member that spoke there has just kind of identified that antisocial behaviour and vandalism is kind of well known at the Crescent Kerno site. And on a similar topic, why is it kind of only now that CCTV is being fitted at Crescent Kerno to cover the external areas? And kind of what other specifications at the site are waiting to be finished or completed that have been missed off so far?
Thank you. Councillor Nolan?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Jonathan, but Crescent Kerno isn't part of my portfolio. I'm just waste, but I'm quite happy to investigate that for you. Vandalism is a real problem with our marshals that are going around looking after the towns. It's particularly come back at Redruth. We've got large groups of youths who don't respect their town and don't respect anyone and are causing trouble. I regularly meet with the Camborne Pool Redruth area network, so I'm very happy to bring this to them to discuss how we can improve security at Crescent Kerno and bring in those outstanding matters that Mr. Donaldson mentions and try and sort it out, because it's not right to take away the bins, but we can't risk the building burning down. So I'm quite happy to take that forward, Leader, Mr. Donaldson, and perhaps report back to Mr. Donaldson when I've had a chat with Camborne Pool Redruth.
Thank you. And the public community network panel meetings are obviously available for you to attend if you wanted to do so, Mr. Donathorn. Thank you for your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to move on then to agenda item number 6, which is the Council Performance Report, Q2 2020-21. Councillor Painter to lead, please.
Thank you, Leader. I will get to the relevant pages. Good morning, all. Colleagues, in addition to responding successfully to the pandemic, we're continuing to focus on delivering the Council's priorities for Cornwall, agreed back in 2017. Today, I'm happy to present our new interactive quarterly performance dashboard, which is available on the Let's Talk Cornwall website. The production of this dashboard follows recommendations from the Customer and Support Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee, focused on improving the transparency and accessibility of our performance reporting for the residents of Cornwall. This quarter, as a reflection of the impact COVID continues to have on Cornwall, an additional 4 overriding COVID risks have been included within the dashboard. These risks sit alongside our existing strategic risks and will continue to be included in future quarterly reporting. Since Q1 performance report was considered by Cabinet on the 16th of September, our lives and livelihoods have continued to be affected by the pandemic. In November, we entered our second lockdown with new restrictions. Whilst the second lockdown has not impacted Cornwall to the same degree as the first, significant challenges continue to be faced, but the Council is meeting those head on, which is partly why we are the only mainland authority in Tier 1. That did not happen by accident. We must therefore recognise that the efforts of every employee of Cornwall Council in providing residents and visitors with the essential services they need day in and day out without any loss of commitment or professionalism during lockdown, the leadership, public spirit and stability provided by the staff and my colleagues, elected members, has made Cornwall Council a dependable rock for people in this unprecedented storm. And this report personifies just that. In Q1, we reported that 44% of our success measures were met. However, in this quarter, that figure has increased to 69%, as the Council has moved from responding to recovering from the pandemic. A number of services have been reinstated and capital construction works recommenced, which has bolstered our delivery. Our performance indicators show positive signs of recovery, but we aren't out of the woods yet, and we can ill afford to be complacent. The teams delivering our Healthy Cornwall priority have continued to support all our residents, ensuring that everyone who needs care can access it. Additionally, support for the wider community has also continued, with 90% of health visits for under 3s being carried out. Further, our Children and Family Service user satisfaction levels have continued to remain above the challenging target of 76%, with 82% of users satisfied this quarter, which is really great news. Our housing teams have also continued to work in a challenging environment during Q2. At its peak, 548 households within Cornwall reported as homeless, nearly double the usual number, all of whom were placed in accommodation, partly thanks to the establishment of 7 additional COVID-secure temporary accommodation sites. Even with our focus and priority being on the well-being of our residents and businesses from the pandemic, Our climate change emergency work streams have continued to progress, most notably securing additional funding to deliver a 50% increase in the number of properties that will be part of our whole house retrofit pilot, as well as securing a green home grant for an additional 200 homes. Further, Cornwall Council was one of only 5 areas in the UK to undertake a local nature recovery strategy pilot, which will map and develop action to start reversing the decline of our natural places. It is imperative that we continue to march towards our carbon neutral goals. Our work this quarter shows that our teams, even when battling the pandemic, are working towards a cleaner, greener Cornwall that this administration has strived to put in place. However, our overall position remains fragile, particularly in respect of our finances, with the impact of a second wave of the pandemic having the potential to reverse the positive direction of travel. There remains a significant challenge to bring the budget into balance, especially now in light of the COVID pandemic, which will need to be a feature of budget planning and monitoring in 2020-21. The total impacts are likely to be in the range of 109 million, with a government support grant to cover these costs of just 89 million. This leaves a 20 million funding gap for Cornwall. There is currently no indication that the government will support the whole cost of the pandemic, although we continue to lobby government to do so. Currently, our budget forecast for this year is a 3.2 million overspend, and we continue to look at ways this overspend can be reduced to ensure we continue to be financially sustainable. The recommendation onto full council is for the approval in the overall uplift of the capital programme by around 18.5 million. This reflects the new additions and changes to individual schemes during the second quarter of the year, which are detailed within Appendix 3 to the report. I'm happy to take any questions, but would ask you to focus on those areas of concern and mitigating actions now being reported. I'll now read the recommendations. So, recommendation 1, that the Quarter 2 Council Performance Report covering performance, finance, risks, projects and Treasury Management Strategy is considered and reviewed in the context of the significant and unprecedented impact of COVID-19. That the continued efforts of the Council to deliver an unprecedented response to support Cornwall's residents and businesses during the pandemic is welcomed. 3, that strategic indicators relating to delayed transfers of care and GCSE attainment for disadvantaged young people are removed from the suite of performance success measures for 2020-21. The Council will be unable to report any performance due to the negative impact of the pandemic, as set out at paragraph 2.3 of the report to be acknowledged. 4, that the proposed reserve movements, environment details in Appendix 2 to the report be approved. 5, that in accordance with the Council's financial regulations, the write-off is approved as detailed in Appendix 2, Section 10 to the report of L2 Leisure non-domestic rates account for £55,090.11. 6, that the revised 2020-21 capital programme and future year cash flows as detailed in Appendix 3 to the report be noted and the changes to the capital programme be approved, subject to approval by full council. So the recommendation to council, number 7, that the council's total capital programme be increased by 18.474 million in relation to the changes detailed in Appendix 3 to the report and funded through the following movement in funding sources. Capital receipts 6.706 million, revenues and reserves 1.032 million, credential borrowing 0.711 million, and grants and contributions received 10.025 million. Thank you, Leader. Happy to propose recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Painter. And Councillor Yvonne Gibbons, second, please.
Thank you, Leader. Happy to second. May I comment now on the performance of elements in my portfolio?
Yep, certainly.
Okay. Well, firstly, core serve. As set out on page 54, the return for this year, 2021, is now forecast at 5.3 million, some 9.9 million down on budget. This is due mainly to the impact of COVID in lessening the projects within Cormac. More detail is given in the confidential papers in Appendix 4 and 5. Secondly, Treveth. As set out in the confidential papers, the cash outlay for the year is expected to be much less than budget due to delays in acquisition and delivery of projects, plus site start delays due to COVID-19 impacts, and also supply chain issues on some of the housing projects. Meanwhile, the transfer of some dozen commercial projects from the council to Trevese is very near completion. Thirdly, the back office functions as they affect my portfolio. Details are set out on pages 103 to 108 of the papers. The total directorate is forecast to be some 7 million over budget, mainly due to COVID impact of 5.5, leaving a net shortfall of 1.5. This is primarily due to a lack of departmental recharges on the Digital Cornwall programme. The good news is that anticipated savings across the department for people, change and digital are anticipated to be delivered. Meanwhile, in terms of the property stuff for the council, which has existing capital and planned investment totaling near 2 billion, plans are being finalised for the rationalisation of council offices down to a small number, with the principle that there will be one main office in each main town, albeit with some exceptions. There is the need, in my view, to bring Corserve and Trevese, given each his property interests, into a formal body with the council to oversee the way forward. Finally, following consideration by local members and cabinet, the implementation programme on offices will start and finish during the duration of the next council. That's all I have to say, Julia. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ethel-Given. So I will go to cabinet members first. So Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to refer to Appendix 3 and draw members' attention to two issues. Some minor delays in starting work on the St Austell A30 link road, due, not surprisingly, partly to COVID-19 and partly to legal challenges around the acquisition of common land. That means that we've now got to apply for some ecological licenses, which are very time constrained. So it's estimated now that work will not commence on the A30 link road until approximately March 2021, which will reduce the spending in the plan for this year. The second thing is the Tamer Bridge Tall Point Ferry, where there's been a bit of an overrun on some of the works to curb and waterproof the road. I'm delighted to say that the South Cantilever was completed this week and opened yesterday, and now operations are back to normal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Rothschild, please.
Thank you, Leader. To avoid repeating myself, I'll be giving an update on performance level associated under item 7 on the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Rothschild. Councillor Nolan, please.
Just a very brief comment, Leader, on page 50 on the household percentage of household waste for recycling. You'll see the big improvement there. We had 34% in Q1, way below target, which was, just to reassure members, as a result of the household waste recycling centres being closed. Since they've reopened, there's been enthusiastic usage of them, and we're back up to where we were. In fact, curbside recycling is improving all across Cornwall, and we're having to order more recycling bags and issue them out quickly. So it's looking very positive as we go forward. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Councillor Hannaford, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I just wanted to offer some reassurance and context to the performance indicator around more assets and services under local influence and control on page 50. It's showing red largely because of the delays experienced because of lockdown 1, both on our side and within the community. These projects are incredibly complex and often complicated. We have since caught up and have 35 projects that are signed off and within legal. It should be noted that although there are 35 proposals, they are made up of over 60 assets. We have a strong pipeline of devolution projects and a number of proposals nearing completion, and I'm confident the next quarter will see improvements in performance. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think that's all of the cabinet members that I've seen indicate. So Councillor Alvey, you're at the top of the list, please, Councillor Alvey.
Thank you. Good morning, Leader. Good morning, everyone. A fairly quick question, hopefully. I'm referring to our Appendix 2 in the report, page 106, para 4.20 to assist you, where it refers to the 1.623 million forecast expenditure on working differently, which is going to now come from reserves. I wonder if you could expand on what types of things this expenditure is, and could I ask, is that some gross or net of any savings that result from working differently, such as reduced travel expenses, reduced printing costs, and perhaps some other infrastructure costs? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Alvey. Councillor Mould, please.
Thank you, Leader. Good morning, everybody. Appendix 2, page 95, 4.9. It seems that the Pyder House project has now got to planning application. But could I please ask how it has cost, appears to have cost £2 million to get to this point? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mould. Sorry, can you just which
it's Appendix 2, page 95, the performance report, 4.9.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Just scribbling my notes to make sure that the answers are picked up. That's all, Councillor Mould. Thank you. Next was, I thought there was someone before Councillor Harris, but Councillor Harris, I don't think I've missed anyone. Councillor Harris, please.
Thank you, Leader. I wonder if I might ask a couple of questions.
Yeah,
within the performance dashboards, there is reference to, on the Healthy Cornwall one, to 750 extra care homes, which refers, I guess, to the Mayor's contract. Can I ask, has the Mayor's contract actually been signed now by the Council? And have any business cases yet been brought forward for approval? That was question one. We have the Trebeth and Corsair performance reports. I've asked this question before, and I'll keep on asking the question. They're not much use to us without seeing a profit and loss account. I mean, it refers to Corsair's, the Trebeth gross profit being 15% up.
Some of those papers are in confidential.
I'm miles away from confidential. I'm only speaking to white papers. I'm being very careful.
Thank you.
On Trebeth, and this is from page 141, which is a white paper, it refers to the gross profit being 15% up, but so what? It's the net profit we care about. We're talking about a drop in the overall return from Corsair that Councillor Ethel Gibbons referred to of £900,000. One question I do ask is, I see from Companies House that Corsair has just had a capital increase of £7.5 million in cash that I presume came from the council. So I'm not quite sure why that an increase of that size is needed. And then my final question, this relates to a comment from Councillor Ethel Gibbons. He said plans are being finalised for estate transformation, etc. I just hope these aren't the same plans that were unanimously rejected by customer scrutiny last week. So there's two separate points there: Healthy Cornwall, Mayor's contract. Why don't we see profit and loss accounts for Trebeth and Corsair, and in particular, why is there a £7.5 million capital increase for cash? And what's going on with the estates transformation programme that got well kicked at customer scrutiny last week? Thank you.
Thank you. So I've got Councillor Pascoe. I'm going to take these three, but I'm just giving colleagues warning to get their X's in the box before I come to Councillor Pascoe. I'm going to do the answers to these, but now it's colleagues' opportunities to get their X's in the box. Otherwise, we'll be coming to the end of questions. So Councillor Painter, I think you can probably pick up Councillor Alvey's and Mould's, and then Councillor Rothschild and Ethan Gibbons for the other ones. So Councillor Painter first, please.
Yeah, thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Albie. The extra cost on the working differently was the Oracle cost. So that was money that was covered from reserves. So that was where that went in, and we're not looking to do double counting. You were talking about whether there was extra savings in there. You know, that is the extra cost of Oracle, and that was taken from reserves. On the question on Pider House, Julian, I'm not entirely sure whether or not my colleagues might know more about the PIDAR project as far as where that's gone. I will just also on Councillor Harris's questions, certainly the final question around the £7.5 million cash increase, or capital increase, that is Cormac money for highways work, so extra cash that's gone in. We will make sure that we confirm that, but that was what I was told it was for. And I think certainly Councillor Rochell can say more about the MEA's contract, but you know, none of those have been delivered yet. We certainly haven't got any buildings up or anything like that, but I'm sure Councillor Rochell can talk more on the MEA's contract and the extra care developments, which we have obviously got some moving through the pipelines, as well as MEA's. I know we have a number of independent developers as well who are looking at those type of extra care developments. So we'll see whether any of those come forward as well, but we don't know. We've certainly got one in Launceston that's in a pre-planning stage, but is very much not wanted because it's not in the right place. But I'm sure, you know, once developers realise that we are seeking extra care, surprisingly enough, many of them are putting it in. I think also perhaps as a Trojan horse to get other development and open market homes. But we'll see where that goes. So whether you're able to go to some of my colleagues who may have further detail on some of the other questions. Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Councillor Rochell, please.
Thank you, Leader. Specifically on the MEA's contract, it hasn't been signed yet. We anticipate signing that within the next few weeks. And subsequently, then no business cases have been put forward yet. But we anticipate those will be coming through early in the new year. To pick up Councillor Painter's point, MEAs aren't the only game in town, clearly, and Adult Social Care are in conversation with a range of other providers, Cornwall-based providers, about providing extra care across the piece. And that was always part of the plan. The MEA's contract is one contract, and we made it very clear from the beginning that wasn't the only partner that we were working with. So we're dealing with a whole range of private developers and charitable concerns, etc., right the way across Cornwall, and hopefully will be those business cases will be brought forward in the new year.
Thank you. And Councillor Ruthorn Gibbons, please.
Thank you, Leader. In terms of the questions on Treveth and Call Serve, yes, we've had discussions about this with Councillor Harris in the past. Nothing new to add, I think, in terms of the performance information that is made available. It should be recognised that in each case there is a board of both Call Serve and Treveth which looks very closely at performance. And as you know, there is the shareholders board for both bodies, which oversees in overall terms how performance is going, and there is a summary of performance information provided on the website. In terms of estate transformation, I do have considerable sympathy with what Councillor Harris is saying there. I think the presentation at CASOC, frankly, was not clear. I've had discussions with officers, and they are preparing a clearer paper setting out what is being done when. So watch this space on that item, if I may.
Thank you. So the next three councillors, Jane Pascoe, Stephen Rushworth and Jane Perkins. So Councillor Jane Pascoe, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's two brief queries, actually, and please forgive me if I've missed the details of either of these in the report. But you will know that Liscard is investigating the need for agricultural rural workspace that will service the agriculture sector in South East Cornwall. Now, we don't wish to duplicate other projects, but is it possible to have a general update on the progress of the Kennard's House project? And the other query, which I think probably to Councillor Brown, was an update also on the Saints Trails. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Of course, there's excellent agriculture rural workspace at the Corsand centre, so already in South East Cornwall, as well as the space at Stoke Crimsland, but I'm sure we'll pick up on that. Councillor Rushworth, please.
Thank you, Leader, and Merry Christmas to you and all other members on the call. My questions relate to the Langgarth Master Plan performance, and also coincide with Cormac report. Phil Mason is the applicant on the registration. However, for the transport reports, the client is Cormac Solutions. So my question is, if Cormac Solutions are undertaking this work, will there be a markup? Will they be paying a markup before charging the council, or will they be just passing on the straight costs to the applicant? Thirdly, secondly on that, there's a disclaimer on page 3 which says no third party may rely upon this document without the prior and express written agreement of ACON. Has that been undertaken, and as the applicant got that all in place? And the reason I'm asking that is because obviously there could be warranty problems in the future on this application, and I know that Cormac have preferred right to be a contractor on all council work, but does that apply even if the funds are coming from central government for the construction of the road, or is there a requirement to go out to public tender? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ethan Gibbons, you've still got your camera on, if you'd like to turn it off. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Kirkham, please.
Thank you. This question is arising out of one Councillor Harris asked earlier, actually, about MERS. I'm surprised to hear it still hasn't been signed, because of course when it came to Cabinet we were told there was an urgency to it that meant there was no time for it to go through scrutiny. So the fact that it hasn't been signed months later is very odd, and I wondered, because it is in the public domain obviously now, if you could tell me what the barriers have been to getting it signed. Thank you.
Thank you. Performance report, Councillor Painter, any of those for you?
I would probably say, Leader, that no, I'm afraid I don't have answers to those questions. I can just, I will put Councillor Pascoe in touch with the officers, and indeed it's Kibbles, the company Kibbles, who are working on the planning application and doing that at Kennard's House, which is on the A30 junction just to the south of Launceston. They are working on a site there, looking at an agricultural market on the A30 dual carriageway, and I think that's following obviously Liscard closing, and also they would look at closing Horworthy Market and relocate Horworthy Market to Kennard's House, and then they're looking at potential other agricultural workspace there, or aligned industries, as well as potentially a dual carriageway service station, motorway type service station. So I think that work is certainly through the planning process, can be viewed, but I'm happy to have a chat with Councillor Pascoe about that one. I think I'm not sure on certainly the questions about Langgarth and the Cormac Solutions stuff. I think probably my colleagues will have more in-depth knowledge of that, and likewise Councillor Rothschild as far as the MERS contract, and Councillor Kirk's question. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Brown on the Saints Trail, please. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Leader. What I will do is forward a detailed response to all members on progress on the Saints Trail. But what I can tell you is that the Newquay Perham Porth section received planning permission a couple of weeks ago, with just a couple of exceptions on the route where we're still in detailed negotiations with landowners. I'm pleased to say that we haven't had to revert to CPO, and if it's at all possible, we will not be reverting to CPO. We want to agree by negotiation and consensus with landowners the way forward. Work's already been completed at Goonhaven on the section which is on the highway to create safe crossings of the A3075, and that's already benefiting the community in Goonhaven. And work will start on the rest of the Newquay to Perranporth route early in the new year.
Thank you. Mr. Mason, some technical questions, I think, from Councillor Rushworth. You might be best placed to pick those up.
Thank you, Leader. So Councillor Rushworth asked about the planning submission and the transport study which is connected to that, and specifically the ACOM held copyright in a sense for that work. My view is, and my understanding is, that we have got that explicit consent, but it's a very detailed point, and I will go away and make sure my understanding is correct, and we will let Councillor Rushworth know that that is the position. But my understanding is we do have the explicit consent to use that information. The other question was in respect of the requirement to go out to public tender or not for government funded work, and you will know that the business plan that is set for the CoreServe group is explicit in respect of the assumptions about work which we are going to passport to them, and often lists major schemes. I don't want to give any misleading information, so in respect of this very specific issue about the work at Langgarth, I think it would be better for me to just check and then give a written answer to Councillor Rushworth.
Thank you, Mr. Mason. And Councillor Rochell on the Mayor's question, please.
Thank you, Leader. There's nothing. There are no major barriers in the way of its signing. It's effectively the usual post-agreement clarifications that we couldn't get out of the way prior to the agreement being reached in the first instance. So there's it's tidying up the loose ends again, and that we couldn't have done before we reached agreement. And the other part is around the second care provider, because as we know, an integral part of each of the units will be care will be provided. And so there's a conversation around who will be that, who could be that second provider, because it may or may not be MERS themselves. But I'm quite happy to provide Councillor Kirkham with a fuller detailed written answer.
Thank you. Mr. Mason, you've still got your camera on. I'm going to go to Councillor Taylor next, as she hasn't asked a question, and I've got Councillor Mould. I haven't got a line through Councillor Mould's earlier question about PIDA, so apologies if I've missed that, but we'll find out from Councillor Mould. Councillor Taylor, please.
Thank you, Leader. I just want to have some clarification, please. Talking about MERS, when the Cabinet met back in the summer, my understanding was that the MERS were going to be the strategic partner for the delivery and operation of the extra care housing. Does there now seem to be some indication that talks are going on with other providers?
I think I'll bring others in, but I think that was always the intention, Councillor Taylor, that this was a big part of extra care, but there would be other providers available to deliver as well. Councillor Mould, please.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, it was just I didn't think my question had been answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, just making sure no one else has come in. No, so I'll draw a line under the questions there. So Helen, Mrs. Charlesworth May, you've indicated. So if you'd like to come in on the MERS question, thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Just as a point of clarity, the contract with MERS always required a second care provider, so that we didn't get into a position where MERS was the only provider. And then, as both Councillor Rochell and Councillor Painter set out, we are also encouraging other extra care providers into Cornwall as appropriate.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Mason, did you want to come in on the PIDA question, please?
Thank you. So the question was about the 2 million spend in respect of the PIDAR regeneration scheme. So I think the very simple answer to that is that the money has been spent on professional fees in developing that scheme. And I think we have to think about that scheme in the context of how big it is. It's a significant area and a new quarter for the city centre. It could be 150 to 200 million pounds overall capital cost of developing that scheme. So in percentage terms, it is a very low percentage in respect of that, and well within the normal amounts which you would expect to spend. But the important point is that we will see that as a recoverable amount of money within the development. So it is a cost of the overall development of which we would want to ensure that we would get that money back as that development is brought forward and that scheme is developed out and essentially parts of that scheme are then sold. So it's a recoverable amount for the council and in line with decisions as has been flagged in the sidebar with cabinet decisions which have been made previously. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Mason.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues, for your questions. If the recommendations have been proposed and seconded, so Democratic Services Officer, if we can move to the vote, please.
Thank you, Leader. I will take the vote by roll call. Please confirm whether you vote for, against or abstain from the proposal. Councillor Jeff Brown.
For.
Councillor Tim Welly.
For.
Councillor Michael Thorne-Gibbons.
For.
Councillor Julian German.
For.
Councillor Edwina Hannaford.
For.
Councillor Sally Hawken.
For.
Councillor Andrew Mitchell.
For.
Councillor Rob Nolan.
For.
Councillor Adam Painter.
For.
And finally, Councillor Rob Rothschild.
For.
Thank you, everyone. I confirm that all members have voted unanimously for the recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Louise. So agenda item 7 is next, Adult Social Care Transformation Update Report, Quarter 2, 2020 to 21. Councillor Rothschild to lead, please.
Thank you, Leader. This quarterly Adult Social Care Transformation Update Report follows the more substantive report that was considered by Cabinet on the 16th of September. The key messages and themes within it are also similar. This is an unprecedented time for health and care services, with pressure continuing throughout the quarter to escalate on our staff and partners. Health services paused during the first quarter and first part of the pandemic were reintroduced at the same time that vigilance was still required with service delivery and the number of COVID infections began to rise again. Also similar to quarter 1 is the theme of uncertainty with regard to the pandemic infection rates, impacts on services and communities within Cornwall. The paper sets out that while some progress has been made in managing the financial outturn in quarter 2, there are signs that quarter 3 is likely to show increasing pressure on care services and an exacerbation of winter pressures. What is also consistent is how residents, staff and partners have risen and continue to rise to the challenge. This report tracks year-on-year increases in user satisfaction. It tracks how reablement services and respite services have increased or been reinstated during quarter 2. It also highlights some of the greatest strengths of the service, and particularly continued hard work and commitment of health and care staff across Cornwall, including joint and partnership working, the resilience and caution of its vulnerable community members, and the support provided by carers, family members and other volunteers. It relates how overall home care capacity is up 21% year on year, how the core business of adult social care, assessments, reviews and safeguarding have continued. Finally, the report updates on progress with the Creffer Warbath Delivering Better Care ASC Transformation Programme, and here progress work has progressed. The new Adult Social Care Transformation Board has met. Work has begun on scoping the maximising the independence of adults work stream and the diagnostic review of working age adults. Work is on track to produce a programme plan setting out the key deliverables, milestones, interdependencies and investment costs for the anticipated 4-year programme by the end of December 2020. Work has continued with the Embrace Care Transformation Programme. I commend this report to Cabinet and I'll read the recommendation set out on page 167. So recommendation 1, that the progress with adult social care transformation be recognised, that the outturn improvement in Q2 be noted alongside the commentary about the emerging Q3 forecast. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Rothschild, and Councillor Painter to second, please. Perhaps Councillor Painter will come in Cabinet Member comments.
Apologies, Leader.
Oh, yeah.
Apologies. I'm happy to second that. I think this is an important piece of work, and I would certainly re-endorse the sentence from Councillor Rothschild. So happy to second the recommendation. Sorry for the delay.
No problem. Thank you. So, colleagues, no one from Cabinet has indicated to come in. So I'm going to go to Councillor Kirkham first. Colleagues, this is your moment to get the axe in the box. Councillor Kirkham, please.
Thanks very much, Leader. I have a couple of questions arising out of the Adult Social Care report. The first is, it states in the report that one respite is to reopen in November. Now, obviously, November's gone now. And the most vulnerable service to us to utilise was to get back in. The most vulnerable were to be reintroduced to the service within 12 weeks of that. I wondered if this did happen in November despite the lockdown, and if people are being reintroduced into respite. I'm on the Learning Disabilities Partnership Board, and the loss of respite and day centres is proving a real issue to people. So my other question was about day centres. The paper says there is no intention to reopen day centres. Now that worried me because I want to know how long that no intention will go on for. It also stated only 43% of people who were in the day centres have been engaged in the outreach. And I know outreach, they're trying to do it by telephone and other means, and it's proving difficult, but 43% seems quite low, and that means there are a lot of people being left out. My other question was about the aspiration regarding bed days, that 71,000 bed days will be saved in acute and community hospitals in 21-22. And the long-term, Q3, we're going to have a long-term report on the support mix between beds, home care, etc. I was going to ask, obviously, the Edward Hayne decision was made recently, and we were told at the CCG that a private care home provider was going to be used in the short term to provide some beds down in West Penwith. I did ask at CCG what the name of this care home was and when those beds would start being provided, as none of the local members seem to be aware of it. So I would like to reiterate that question now and really ask, well, I suppose it's too early to say. I'll have to wait for the report in Q3, but what the aspirations will be for bed-based community hospitals in Cornwall. Thank you.
So, Councillor Kirkham, the bed days saved is in relation to early intervention. So what's your question on bed days saved?
No, my question was simply going forward, what is the future of those beds in the community hospitals that we have left, and the ones like Edward Hayne that are no longer in existence?
No, that's great. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Councillor Fairman, please.
Good morning, Leader, and thank you for letting me speak. So my question for Councillor Rothschild is, would you agree with me that notwithstanding the excellent work that this report has highlighted, that the lack of clarity from central government about a sustainable method of funding social care is very unhelpful, and that, again, notwithstanding this excellent work already undertaken by Cornwall Council, the freedom to charge an extra 3% on the preset next year is going to be essential to looking after the vulnerable people in our county.
Thank you. So no one else has indicated, obviously challenging times during the pandemic, as Councillor Kirkham said. Some of the support that we provide to our vulnerable residents is critical, but really difficult to do in a face-to-face way during the pandemic, although it's an opportunity to congratulate all of those that have continued to do face-to-face work throughout the pandemic. And in some respects, we've been exceptional in the level that we've been able to provide. Councillor Rothschild, if you'd like to respond to those questions, please.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I echo your sentiments in terms of the response from our frontline staff. It's been quite exceptional, really, and in no small way has been a major contributory factor to the fact that we're in Tier 1 and are likely to stay in Tier 1 when the announcement's made later. So in terms of Respite and Daycare, quite frankly, if I wasn't at the Cabinet today, I'll be preparing a response about respite care and day centres. So that's imminent. We're pretty clear about what we can do in terms of respite care and day centres. So I can't guarantee that it'll be out today, but certainly within the next day or so, we'll be making formal announcements about reopening respite care and day centres. So, you know, literally, it could be literally within the next couple of days. What was interesting in terms of the follow-up that we've done on people attending day centres, and I haven't got the precise percentages to hand, but a number of people have done okay not going to day centres, and some of those didn't get outreach support either. So there's kind of an interesting dynamic there. So some of the people have coped really rather well with the outreach support that we provided. But then, of course, there's that group that received outreach work and haven't done so well. And certainly that's part of the reasoning behind a limited reopening of the day centres. And again, that will be out there. In fact, I was having the conversation about that very thing prior to Cabinet this morning. It's very difficult for me to comment on Edward Hayne because Edward Hayne is an NHS facility. I am aware as Councillor Kirkham about the long history about the closure of Edward Hayne Hospital. I don't actually have the name of the private provider that Councillor Kirkham touched on in terms of providing alternative beds, but I will do some detective work, and if I can find out who is, and if I'm allowed to reveal it, I'm happy to do so. And again, I'll include that in my written response. Councillor Fairman, thanks very much for your kind remarks. The question over long-term funding for adult social care is one that has been around for as long as I can remember, and certainly the Green Paper has been promised for a number of years now. But I understand, you know, that that things are very difficult. There are other things on people's mind at the moment, but actually doesn't make life any easier. You know, 1 year settlements are satisfactory to in a small extent, but of course it makes strategic planning that much more challenging. The opportunity to levy a 3% precept addition for ring fence to adult social care is one that we are debating at the moment. It would be remiss of me as portfolio holder not to push for as much money as I can possibly secure for adult social care. But those discussions aren't concluded yet. But yes, the failure, and I'm not pointing the finger at any particular government because it's been a consistent issue for many years. And certainly some of the work that we've been doing with our service users over the last few weeks have indicated their constant concern that adult social care isn't a free service, that, you know, it is means tested, as opposed to the NHS being free at the point of delivery. So, and that's to many people that's a surprise that it's like that, but you know, that's the system that we live in. So I know that I and many of my colleagues will continue to lobby for that long-term settlement, because quite frankly, having year-on-year settlements, whilst it helps in the short term, certainly doesn't help us to prepare an adult social care system fit for the 21st century on a long-term basis.
Thank you, Councillor Rothschild. So no one else has indicated, in which case we've had a proposer and seconder. So Democratic Services Officer, if we could move to the vote, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'll take the vote by roll call. Please confirm whether you vote for, against, or abstain from the proposal. Councillor Jeff Brown.
For.
Councillor Tim Dwelly.
For.
Councillor Mike Ethel Gibbons.
4.
Councillor Julian German.
4.
Councillor Edwina Hannaford.
4.
Councillor Sally Hawken.
4.
Councillor Andrew Mitchell.
4.
Councillor Rob Nolan.
4.
Councillor Adam Painter.
4.
And Councillor Rob Rotchell.
4.
Thank you. I can confirm that all members have voted unanimously for the recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. So the next item is the Treveth Registered Provider business case. Councillor Ethel Gibbons to lead. Colleagues will have noted, as with the performance report, there are confidential appendices. I don't, Cabinet are cognizant of these. I don't believe we need to get into those in terms of the recommendations that are presented to us today. Councillor Ethel Gibbons, if you'd like to lead, please.
Leader, thank you. Colleagues, the papers before us today are both simple and complex. They are simple in that we're being asked to support the principle of Treveth being a registered provider, and more complex in explaining what that means, and also the arguments for doing so, and also the arguments for not doing so and going an alternative route. I make 5 points. Firstly, the background. Treveth was established by the council to generate a return to supplement its income, whilst also supporting the council's priorities of job creation, economic growth and improved housing. Cabinet approved the Treveth 1-year and 4-year business plans in March this year, and these set out the expectation that Treveth would set up a new entity as a registered provider of social housing. This registered provider will be a new subsidiary in the Treveth Group, and in accordance with Article 20 of the Council's Constitution, sets out the requirement that for the creation of any new council-owned entity, there must be a business case approved in accordance with Cabinet procedure rules. 2. The benefits of the new legal entity as a registered provider within the Treveth family are set out on pages 191 and 192 of members' papers. In essence, it means the council can retain the affordable content of its developments, as well as shared ownership receipts. In summary, the financial benefits are significant and are set out in the confidential papers on pages 195 and 196. It should be noted that the new body will not compete for affordable development sites within the HRA, the Housing Revenue Account, or any of the existing RSLs, registered social landlords in Cornwall. Point 3. The external legal advice has been taken on the way forward and is set out on pages 197 to 204. It concludes there are benefits as a profit registered provider, a limited liability partnership that is able to distribute profits to Treveth Holdings and ultimate Cornwall Council, that it makes it less likely that the right to buy provisions will apply to tenants and that it optimises tax efficiency. This legal advice also concludes that the alternative of not going the RP route, but via the ALMO, Arm's Length Management Organisation, was finely balanced, but on balance supported going the registered provider route. Again, just to emphasise point 4, the Treveth business plans will be updated and approved by Cabinet in March 2021 and will include the business plan for the registered provider entity. So finally, in conclusion, Leader, I would repeat the summary of the Treveth Finance Director on page 194 of your papers, and I quote, "The detailed information within this business case shows the enormous value to Treveth of setting up a registered provider and retaining all Section 106 affordable units generated by Treveth within its ownership. It also highlights the benefit to Cornwall Council and in particular the generation of a greater return that can be used to support services without restriction," unquote. That's all I have to say at the moment, Leader. I will now read out the recommendations as set out on page 182. 1. That the business case attached at Appendix 1 to the report be approved to enable Treveth to set up a new entity as a registered provider with the regulator of social housing. 2. That the business plan for the new registered provider entity is considered for approval as a key decision by the Leader in March 2021.
Thank you, Councillor Ethel Gibbons. Councillor Painter to second, please.
Mitchell was.
Leader, I think you'll find that's me who's seconding this item.
Councillor Mitchell. Thank you.
No problems. Glad to help. So as the portfolio holder for homes, I would like to second the motion to approve the setup of the Treveth registered provider entity. The schemes that Treveth will deliver as part of their business plan contribute to the priorities of the council under the Homes for Cornwall aims of providing 1,000 homes and beyond, and raising the standards of privately rented homes. Treveth look to provide schemes in alignment with the local plan and where there is most need for good quality, affordable new homes. The registered provider entity will help to ensure that residents of Cornwall will benefit from the investment in housing provision for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. And so no one else from Cabinet has raised their hands. So we'll start with Councillor Harris, please.
Thank you, Leader. A couple of questions. One for clarity, because it was something I queried on my notes. In paragraph 1.6, it says Treveth will be updating their 4 and 1 year business plans, which will be considered by the Leader in March 21. Councillor Thorne-Gibbons said they'll be considered by Cabinet in March 21. So which is it, as a simple question? One thing that in this that bothers me, you're not going to allow us to discuss the pink papers because I think there's a nonsense in there in the numbers, but I'll do an email on that if we can't discuss them. By keeping these properties in Treveth and making Treveth a registered provider, we are effectively boosting Treveth's balance sheet, therefore increasing its borrowing from Cornwall Council to fund that balance sheet. Now, in terms of Cornwall Council gets its return from Treveth by the interest it charges on that borrowing, which it brings into Cornwall Council's revenue account come what may. In other words, whether Treveth makes a profit or a loss, Cornwall Council still brings in the interest on that borrowing. Now, at the outset with Treveth, it was proposed that that revenue surplus from Treveth on the interest would be taken to a specific investment reserve, given that, and this is earlier comments, I'm not looking at the current papers, Treveth wasn't forecast to show a surplus for a number of years. So my question is, if we are going to boost Treveth's balance sheet like this, therefore boosting the return to Cornwall Council on the interest it receives or is receivable from Treveth, will that interest surplus go into a reserve account, or will it in fact be brought straight into revenue and available for spending, which would be a pretty dangerous use of funds? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Taylor, please.
Thank you, Leader. The point I want to make is that Treveth becoming a registered provider will now give Cornwall 3 registered providers. For economists of scale, you just have to wonder the value and the judgment behind that decision. And just to remind this administration that the government are running pilot schemes on the right to buy within registered providers. And I'm wondering if they are actually going to be factoring that in, especially in relation to the potential loss if Treveth were in that right to buy situation on the construction of their houses. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Rushworth, please.
Thank you, Leader. I just want to point out something that I think is a bit of a problem with sites at Bobbin and possibly the one in Tolvaden. It's related to it's related to this.
Right.
Okay, and you'll find out in a minute.
Thank you very much. I'm excited.
Good. On going around those sites and on looking at the neighbouring site of Wayne Homes, on the neighbouring site of and the site we have that Taylor Wimpey did in Wakeford, the standard of maintenance is completely so different. The private sector sites are well maintained. There's not a weed anywhere. The Waynome site is built with brick roads and brick paveways. I couldn't find one weed there yesterday. Yet the Bodmin site is full of weeds. So I think this is a positive side for this for this move, is that if all of the properties in that state are basically then being in the control of Treveth, I think they will be better placed to provide a much better maintenance and landscaping maintenance to these sites, and then we can confidently go and say we're producing the exemplar product we want. So that's what I view as a positive side, but I do share Councillor Harris's concerns about the funding. Thank you.
So no question.
Well, my question is, will they be able to, without being tied into other registered landlords on that site, will it give them the ability to be able to choose who does the maintenance?
Thank you. So to remind colleagues, if you'd like to turn your cameras off if you're not speaking, thank you. So Chief Executive, my understanding is that the recommendation is for the business case for leader's decision. Can you confirm the process, please?
Thank you, Leader. The signing off of the business plan is a key decision of the council, which can be taken by way of a leader's decision or by way of a report to cabinet. Given that we've had a detailed 4-year business plan previously set out, the current plan at the moment is that is taken by way of a leader's decision as a key decision.
Thank you. So we've got some technical financial questions there. We've got Adam Rowlandson, the FD of Treveth, on the call, and also Tracy Langley, our Section 151. So Adam, would you like to come in, please?
Hi, good morning. Yes, on answering the questions, I'll start with Councillor Harris's question. I think the question was more about what happens once Treveth provides a return back to the council, rather than the internal workings of Treveth. Hopefully, I have that correct.
Ms. Langley can come in on that. Carry on. Sorry, I'm asking Mr. Ronaldson to answer the Treveth questions. Are you with us, Mr. Ronaldson? Can you hear?
Oh, yes, I am. Sorry. Councillor Taylor, I'm not sure I caught all of your question. I got distracted, unfortunately. Yes, you are correct. There will be 3 RPs within the Cornwall Council family. And yes, there is potential duplication of cost and more inefficiency. However, for Treveth, it's overwhelmingly, we believe, the right decision to set up the RP for Treveth. And that's obviously, as the Commercial and Financial Director of Treveth, one of my roles is to obviously safeguard Treveth. And finally, Councillor Rushworth, yes, thank you for going around our sites and having a look. I know we've obviously discussed it more than once, the appearance and the look of the sites. We currently have a management agreement in place for a period of time. Obviously, it has step-in arrangements, and we will continue to monitor the appearance and the quality of the schemes that we do. We don't want to have reputational issues that suggest that potentially our schemes do not look as attractive as other schemes, given the quality and the size of the houses on those schemes. Thank you.
Sorry, Julian, you were muted then.
Thank you, Councillor Painter. Ms. Langley, please.
Thank you, Leader. In answer to the question, the technical question about how we would treat profits in the council's accounts, we undertake a review of the financial model every year, as is best practice, and we will make decisions about how we treat those different items if they differ from the business plan as we undertake the setting the accounts for that year. And if those are different accounting treatments, then we will have a conversation between ourselves and the external auditors if it differs from the business plan.
Thank you. And Councillor Eathorne-Gibbons, anything to add?
I think the only point I would make is the right to buy legislation and what that impact might have. I think at this point in time we don't know, so it's something we have to be aware of.
Thank you.
Otherwise, I don't think there's anything else I want to say. The questions, as far as I'm concerned, have been answered satisfactorily by the officers here. And could I thank Adam and the team at Treveth for what they're doing to take this one forward.
Thank you. So no one else has indicated, but Councillor Taylor wants to come back in. Oh, sorry, Councillor Mitchell, you've indicated.
I did, yes, thank you. Just to also come back on the right to buy issue. So despite some very positive words from government, it does look like also legislation's coming forward to repeat the mistakes historically made about selling off housing stock. Obviously, if we still have about 60 properties a year that are bought under the existing right to buy scheme. The attractiveness of a brand new built home would obviously make that possibly a real issue for the council and Treveth. However, unless they're changing this in their legislation, I understand we have 15 years worth of protection where we have to at least charge what they cost to build. So there is no technical discount, but it would be a serious issue, I think, if we allow a huge increase in the right to buy schemes that come forward, and particularly when the government is acknowledging that we do have such a issue generally in housing, but also on the affordability of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, you've indicated to come back in.
Yes, thank you. It was a remark that Mr. Ronalds had made, which is understandable, and his statement was that it was he needed to protect Treveth. But the point I'm trying to make is that ultimately we will have 3 registered providers, and this is taxpayers' money, and that should be at the forefront of any decisions as opposed to protecting another standalone entity. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Mitchell, you've talked before about the benefit of additional RPs. Would you like to come in on that one, please?
Yes, so thank you, Leader. Yeah, I would just like to say that operationally it does make sense, not only for the company, but also for the council and therefore the Cornish taxpayer ultimately. I think it is one of these situations where more is more and more is better. We have had a few issues at the beginning and the first pilot scheme sites being handed over. And I genuinely really believe now that we've got Treveth set up, they can concentrate on the HDP and getting those houses into the rented market with a 35% affordable share, and the council can truly concentrate on delivering what everybody, UI and everybody watching this and out there in Cornwall would see as a council home, where we deliver them through the housing revenue account. My ambition is to see Cornwall Housing Limited operate across the whole of Cornwall and provide social affordable homes. So I think it is a win-win, and ultimately in the round there will be a payback, a positive payback to the Cornish taxpayer.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. And Councillor Rushworth, you've indicated to come back in.
Yeah, just a question to Adam. He's admitted, yeah, obviously, he's inherited a maintenance situation at Bodmin and Talvaden, but with their new sites, if they are completely in control without any other large influences in that control, will they be able to pick whoever they want and dictate the terms of the maintenance, which every site has a maintenance service agreement? Would it give him more power to be able to provide a better service for the people who live there, and obviously for the reputation of the council?
Thank you, Councillor Rushworth. So no one else has indicated, so I'm going to draw a line now. Mr. Ronaldson, if you'd like to respond to Councillor Rushworth, please.
I think as a commercial organisation, we would look at each time a new scheme is nearing completion at what the appropriate maintenance arrangement is. You know, I can't prejudge that, but you know, if you have an incumbent managing agent, you have to work with them to ensure you get the best quality maintenance and appearance of your scheme. So it is a scheme by scheme basis, and we keep all our contracts under review, management agreements or any other professional advisors that we have, and we will continue to do so.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. So that's been proposed and seconded. Can I remind councillors, although doing your Christmas cards is very important, if you'd like to turn off your cameras, that would be welcome. Thank you. So Democratic Services Officer has been proposed and seconded. Can we move to the vote, please?
Thank you, Leader. I'll take the vote by roll call. Please confirm whether you vote for, against or abstain from the proposal. Councillor Jeff Brown.
For.
Councillor Tim Dwelly.
For.
Councillor Mike Eathorne-Gibbons.
For.
Councillor Julian German.
For.
Councillor Edwina Hannaford.
We can see you moving, Ed, but we can't hear.
Oh, for. Thank you very much. Councillor Sally Hawken.
For.
Councillor Andrew Mitchell.
For.
Councillor Rob Nolan.
For.
Councillor Adam Painter.
For.
And Councillor Rob Rochell.
For.
Thank you. I can confirm all members have voted unanimously for the recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Eathorne-Gibbons. So we're moving on then to agenda item number 9, delivering and sustaining economic growth post-COVID-19 and the end of the EU transition period. Councillor Dwelly, please.
Sorry, Leader, I'm just turning on camera and demuting myself. Thank you. This is a really important report, of course, and it's in the context of 2 huge challenges for Cornwall. We have not only COVID, and I'll come on to some of the specific challenges for Cornwall that COVID has caused, but also we are at the on the eve of leaving the EU's funding support that Cornwall has had for many years. And if I could just first start by noting and pointing out that on that particular matter, before I come back to COVID, we have always hoped that government would deliver a similar amount of support for Cornwall that we had from the EU. Broadly, that's around £100 million a year of structural funds, because we are a very poor part of the UK and Europe. It was therefore very disappointing indeed to hear that the Prime Minister's pledge to do that, which I would have happily welcomed, has now been abandoned. Unfortunately, the funds that we're looking to get in Cornwall, the best case scenario is little over a half of what we were having in terms of 100 million. And next year, the year that we face perhaps our biggest challenge economically in Cornwall for a generation, because of Brexit, because of COVID, the amount of money government has made available for Shared Prosperity Fund, the pilot nationally, is around £220 million. Now, were Cornwall to be given a per capita amount of that, which is how previous government growth deals have been allocated, we would get literally less than 2 million compared to 100 million. So it does seem to me that we are in a very difficult place, and I do hope that our MPs will continue to make the case to government to rectify this and hopefully persuade the Prime Minister to actually see through his own pledge, because that's what we all want. Now, turning to COVID, which is obviously on everyone's mind at the moment. I'm sorry to report that the challenge is huge here in Cornwall. We are said to be, evidence suggests we are the biggest economic British loser from the lockdown. We are, thank heavens, in tier 1. And although it's horrendous how many people have died of COVID in Cornwall, we have been relatively lucky not to have huge figures on that front. But we should be under no illusion that our economy has been absolutely hammered by this. If I can give you some examples, the number of people on universal credit in Cornwall between March and August increased by 96%, it doubled. If I give you another example, the proportion of jobs in Cornwall that were furloughed was some of the highest in the country at 37%. It's huge. And also 75% of all self-employed people in Cornwall, and we have lots of self-employed people in Cornwall, have been on self-employment income support. I would also point out that the very latest jobless figures, and this is before furlough ends, have gone up somewhere to around 6.5%, about a 2-point rise. That's before furlough comes to an end. Even the very recent data, which I'd be very happy to share with members, has seen the ONS revise Cornwall's figures on GVA downwards in recent months. We are among the worst hit part of the place in the UK. We may well be the worst hit economically. So the scale of that is, notwithstanding Brexit and whatever form of Brexit we get, this is of a scale similar to the financial collapse of 2008. We desperately need help. And that's why if we're serious about levelling up, we should be looking at a lot more than 100 million a year, certainly not halving that. However, there are things we can do and we will do, and I'm sure that members from all parties and groups will support these things. In these papers today, we're looking at an investment by us, Cornwall Council, of 3.7 million, broadly speaking, and that will leverage in a further £23 million from other sources, delivering overall a figure of £26,752,000 of economic benefits to Cornwall. So to give key examples, the Careers We Want part of this paper is up to £2.5 million from us to drive delivery of employment skills and redundancy support through the European Social Fund. Now, the good news here is that many of us have complained for some time that ESF was too slow to get out to people in Cornwall. I'm very pleased to welcome the DWP's urgent help with this, and it means that we are not looking like we will be underspent on ESF. Thank you, DWP. But our money, of course, leverages in a lot more from them. And this is all about people facing unemployment or collapse in their business or their self-employment, getting help to retrain, to find other routes, or perhaps to continue to do what they do if, for example, the vaccine, which we all look forward to, makes a difference. In terms of sector support, key sectors, 1.216 million to drive productivity gains, growth and improve environmental performance in businesses across Cornwall, particularly marine renewables, the creative industries, agriculture, and a Screen Cornwall fund, which will hopefully attract significant filmmaking and TV programme making in Cornwall, which in turn helps deliver jobs and growth here and promotes Cornwall, of course, as a place to visit. So that's the content, and most of these figures and funds have been previously discussed and have been they're not changing from what we had previously wanted to do, but today is our chance to vote them through to happen. On recommendations, Julian, I don't know if you need me to read them all through, but I do have one particular addition. Did you want me to read them all out? Yeah, okay. So just before I start, I'd like to mention that there's an additional recommendation E, and it's purely based on advice from legal about how the authority is delegated to the strategic director. So that will come in, and it's a new addition, please everyone note. So the recommendations are, one, that Cornwall Council's COVID-19 Economic Recovery Plan 2020 to 2021, attached at Appendix 1 to the report, is approved. 2, that in order to support Cornwall's economy, including supporting the transition out of the EU and supporting the economic recovery from COVID-19, as outlined in the Council's Economic Recovery Plan 2020 to 2021, the following programme of economic investments totalling 3.680 million and leveraging 23.036 million be approved. A, that up to 2.5 million from the Economic Development Match Funding Reserve be allocated to support the Careers We Want programme to provide employment redundancy skills and skills projects as set out in this report. B, that up to 0.38 million from the Economic Development Match Funding Reserve be allocated to support delivery of the Screen Incentive Fund and Cultivator project as set out in this report. C, that up to 0.2 million from the Economic Development Match Funding Reserve be allocated to the Cornwall Trade and Investment project as set out in this report. D, that up to 0.6 million from the existing Wave Hub ring-fenced reserve be allocated to the Floating Offshore Wind, also known as FLOW, accelerator project as set out in this report. And the new E to add on, that authority is delegated to the Strategic Director for Economic Growth and Development in consultation with the Section 151 officer and the monitoring officer, as appropriate, to enter into funding, grants and any other relevant legal agreements and associated processes for the purposes of implementing the projects set out at 2A to D above, and authority is delegated to the Service Director for Economic Growth in consultation with the Section 151 officer and the monitoring officer, as appropriate, to enter into a funding agreement for the ABCD Agriculture Bas Carbone for Dairy Farms project, subject to Interreg funding being approved. So I hereby propose this paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dwelly. So I'm confident that I've got the right seconder this time, as it's myself. So happy to second. It's great that we're managing to make this investment, draw in much needed European funding to provide skills training for up to 6,000 Cornish residents, that we're investing in the creative industries, one of our high value, significant growth sectors, and that we're investing in renewables, so not just creating jobs, but also helping to tackle climate change. So very happy to second. So far, no Cabinet members indicating to come in. So Councillor Taylor, followed by Councillor Harris. Councillor Taylor, please.
Thank you, Leader. Once again, I'm listening to Councillor Dwelly, who I'm sort of going to like to Uriah Heep. His doom and gloom, self-fulfilling prophecies are going to do incredible damage to the economy of Cornwall. Once again, he has obviously misrepresented the facts in relation to the pilot scheme into the shared prosperity. And I'm just going to endorse the remarks from Steve Double, one of our Cornish MPs, who works incredibly hard on behalf of Cornwall to reinforce the statement that the Prime Minister has made that announcement that Cornwall will not lose out on EU funding under the shared prosperity when it's announced. You know, we've all are experiencing a really, really difficult time, and some of us are more luckier than others, and people have been affected. There's absolutely no mistake. You know, people have lost jobs, income has been reduced, and for some businesses, you know, they will find it very, very difficult to get back. But I am actually thanking this Conservative government. Never has a government made such huge interventions into the private and public sector funding with all the initiatives that have come into Cornwall. Now, Councillor Dwelly, you know, does misrepresent facts, and I'm actually going to take him back to the paper as well on page 206, where there's the mention of the Tortoise Media Corona shock. And I thought I'd actually look at what Tortoise Media are doing and get some up-to-date information.
And this was dated the 21st of October, as opposed to the information that he was relying on in June. And it actually says that Weybridge is now enjoying a colossal surge of up to 80% in trade on last year. And Penzance, when he wrote the article earlier, has actually now recording the fact that there's even more spending than the same time than last year. So, you know, let's be a little bit more positive about what's happening within our business community. Let's be more positive about how the community within Cornwall are wanting to try and make things better. And my final point that I do want to make is I'm really pleased to see that on page 208, there is a mention of using council land to create jobs. And I will be reminding Councillor Dwelly of that particular point as the next few months span out. So please be positive. Let's thank this government for what they are doing, and let's rejoice within our communities on how, you know, we can make a difference. Let's go out and spend locally, and I'm sure that Tortoise will be making some more remarks positively about what's happening in Penzance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Harris next, please.
Thank you, Leader. Mine's a pretty simple question, actually. I'm just looking at page 213, sector support, and I've picked this one as an example because it's quite easy. The Screen Cornwall Growth Fund and Cultivator. And my question is, how going forward is this monitored and reported on? You know, we're saying we're going to put £380,000 in, which will leverage in 2 million ERDF, 700,000 ERDF cultivator, and £380,000 private sector. So how actually is it monitored and reported on, and how are the outcomes actually tracked? When do we actually get these monies in cash? And the private sector number, is that an aspiration, or is that a hard fact? I presume it's an aspiration. So they're pretty simple governance questions, please.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Monk, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. I've got an angry icon from Councillor Hanniford against my crossing the box, so I'm not sure if I've come in at the right time or not. I'm
sure it was supposed to be a heart, Councillor Monk.
Oh, I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was. Thank you. Thank you. It was just a question about the Cornwall floating offshore wind project. There's just a bit of clarification. They're stating that it has the potential to deliver 10 gigawatts of UK's target of 50 gigawatts. Well, from the last time I looked at the floating offshore wind capability of down at Hale, it was 30 megawatts. And given that there's 1,000 megawatts to a gigawatt, it just seems a bit erroneous to suggest that the floating offshore wind project that we've got within Cornwall Council could produce up to 20% of the UK's total power need. I just want a bit of clarification on that. And also the release of money of £0.6 million ring fenced. I always thought that ring fence money was actually for the decommissioning of the project, should and when it actually ends. So I'm a little bit unsure about why that money has been allocated into that. I'm a total supporter as the portfolio holder knows of all things renewable. However, I have got grave concerns about the ability of the project down there to actually generate any profit or anything other than pay big salaries to consultants. So I'm a little bit concerned about that project in general, but I'm just wondering if Councillor Dwelly can actually clarify some of the issues I've raised. Thank you.
Thank you. So there's the series of three. I'm just going to comment on Councillor Taylor's questions. I know Councillor Dwelly is more than capable of responding, but there were political points in there and I feel the need to pick up on. I don't believe that Councillor Dwelly has misrepresented the UK SPF pilot. We've been asking to run a pilot for the UK government for years now, and unfortunately we're coming to the end of this funding stream, 2020 being the last year of allocations, although projects can run on through 3 years known as N+3. So what we're expecting from government, given the promises, is £100 million a year, and we will indeed thank government when they give us the £100 million that they've promised, but the pilot is far short from that. We also thank government for the money that's come to support Cornish businesses, but we also want the 28 million that we're holding so that we can continue to support Cornish businesses, money that's in the council's bank account that we're not able to release to support government. In fact, government wants us just to hand it back. And then we move on to levelling up. So what the figures that we've just talked about are just about standstill in terms of European funding. We're still woefully behind the UK average GDP and GVA, and we need the additional support from government to level up. So I think you've made a political point, Councillor Taylor, and I've responded. I'm sure Councillor Dwelly will, and as well as answering the other questions. Councillor Dwelly.
Yes, thank you. I'm not sure, Councillor Taylor, you asked any questions actually, but if I can just say to you that when you say that you are claiming that we're not losing out, we are. It's a fact. The fact is 220 million nationally in the year that should be the 100 million continuation of funding is going to produce, if we're lucky, a LEP area average of 5.8 million. Now, I know Councillor Taylor used to work in a bank, and I think you can probably work out that that isn't 100 million. It clearly is ludicrously low at a time of COVID and a time when we have Brexit challenges to our fishing industry and to farms. So to be clear here, we want to be positive, but we need the government to do what the Prime Minister said. And it's absolutely evident currently that that's not going to happen. Now, I would be the first to welcome a change of heart from the government on that. Please, can you help us lobby for that? I know the MPs want that. We want that. But even if we had 100 million, that's not levelling up. That's staying level. And staying level at a time outlines the huge challenges to Cornwall. And I'm sorry, but when you say rejoice with echoes of Margaret Thatcher, I think people will simply laugh at that. We have huge challenges in Cornwall. We are not in a position of rejoicing and celebrating. We have to really work hard, all of us, to make a difference and to stop people losing their jobs and to help their businesses recover. Now, thank you. Leading on to Councillor Harris, monitoring of this project, Councillor Harris, of course, being an EU-funded project, that's all going to be through the usual techniques and through the ITI board. And by the way, I could quickly point out that we still don't know whether we're going to have Cornwall control of the future funds like the ITI board. We want more control in Cornwall. I should have mentioned this earlier. The risk at the moment is that Whitehall, London, may be deciding what gets funded through Shared Prosperity Fund, but we can discuss that another time. In terms of the 380,000 private sector, my understanding is that is secured, but I want to get some detail on that, Councillor Harris, and I'm more than happy to get you a written answer on that, because I think that might be what you're seeking. So if you bear with me, we'll get you that in writing. Councillor Monk, thank you, and I do appreciate the fact that you support renewable. Not all your colleagues do, and your point about the 10 gigawatts is well made, but it's important to recognise we're not claiming that just for the equivalent of the Wave Hub and what it can do, but it's based on an extremely ambitious idea that we can be out there in the Irish Sea looking for much more substantial use of offshore wind and play a big part in that, using Hale, but also other parts of Cornwall, possibly Falmouth, to make that happen. So we have some excellent officers at Cornwall Council working on this. I'm not going to sit here and guarantee that, but you know, if I refer you back to Councillor Taylor, your leader, I think you should be positive and rejoice that we're trying to do those things. Now, in terms of the decommissioning, it's important to point this out. The money set aside to decommission Wave Hub was based on there being no sale of Wave Hub. we are confident there will be a sale of Wave Hub, hopefully in January, and obviously details to follow, and you'll all want to know when that's happened. But one of the positives from that will be that because of that, we have that money still available to us, which is fantastic, because it means we can help to resource the kind of ambitious offshore wind plans that we all have. And I know, Ollie, you yourself would want to do the same in this situation. So I think we've got to be as ambitious as we possibly can. And it's one of the things that makes Cornwall different. It's one of our specialisms. Offshore wind's going to be very important. So is lithium. So is our strong solar, geothermal. I could go on. So I'm totally committed to this, and I'm also working with cabinet colleagues to seek as much capital investment as possible in low carbon and playing our part in the climate change emergency and how we respond to it with significant investment in these technologies, which are the way ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dwelly. So a couple of cabinet members indicated to come in, so I'll bring them in and then go back to councillors not on the committee. So just need to come across. Councillor Hannaford's got a camera on, so Councillor Hannaford, please.
Thank you, I'm hopeful. And I must apologise to Councillor Monk, that was just operator error, so I do apologise for that. It's really difficult to be joyous when you know people in your community are losing their jobs and businesses are failing. And it's really difficult to be joyous when you're listening to broken promises made to Cornwall that there would be no loss of funding. So it's not the time to be joyous about the state of our economy. But I would like to thank and compliment the portfolio holder, Councillor Dwelly, for prioritising carbon neutral actions in our recovery and renewal plans. The ratchet for this funding is quite significant. From our £600,000 investment, it represents £5 million from the European Union on page 214. So I'd like to highlight that investment in floating offshore wind, or FLOW. If we are to achieve carbon neutrality, then we need to significantly raise our renewables production. Offshore wind and the use of Wave Hub is really welcome and shows Cornwall is a leader in decarbonising our economy, as well as supporting, in this case, up to 40 businesses. I think that Cornwall has the opportunity to be the powerhouse for the UK, and our investment and our EU investment will meet that ambition to generate that in the Celtic Sea. And just for context, the largest onshore turbine, which is actually ours in partnership with Centrico, is 3 megawatts. That's saving 3,000 tonnes of carbon per annum and producing an income for the council of £300,000 a year at Venton Teague. So the scale of offshore is very different. So although 10 gigawatts is ambitious, my understanding is that one offshore wind turbine could be 4 gigabyte, and that starts to be achievable. So I welcome this investment and thank the portfolio holder for his foresight.
Thank you, Councillor Hannaford. Councillor Mitchell, please.
Thank you, Leader. So it's just an overall view from myself about the politics that come to this. We can always talk about politics when we're looking at budgets and money and how it's distributed across the UK into different regions and different counties. Cornwall has never, ever done brilliantly well from Westminster, and to be shouting thanks and joyous praise for holding a politician to a promise, particularly when that politician is the Prime Minister, I don't think is something that Cornwall or we should be doing. If we look back to the statements made, there was nothing made by Boris Johnson about there'll be a pilot scheme or a running period. It was Cornwall will have what Europe was going to give it, and that's £100 million. Now, if we get £100 million a year in 5 years' time, then, as Councillor Dwelly says, that's actually backward steps. We need to see investment here in Cornwall. I read in the LGUI, which we all receive on a daily basis a few weeks ago, that part of the planning department was moving out of Westminster and Whitehall and going up north. Now, the implication was that that was a payoff for getting the Red Wall constituency some jobs. Cornwall has 6 Conservative MPs. We've been a Conservative heartland for decades, and yet we see nothing like that coming to Cornwall. You know, there should be no need for Councillor Taylor, on behalf of the 6 Cornish MPs and the Conservative government, to be saying, hey, we've held the Conservative government to what they promised. The money should come, and you know, I'll certainly welcome it, but as I say, a promise from the Prime Minister, oh, he's kept his word. That just goes to show the state of politics in this country at this time, and unfortunately, as far as I can see, for the foreseeable future. We would have to have huge investment, that £100 million a year Councillor Dwelly was talking about. We need levelling up to have the poverty levels of the north, and we should be first in line. And I would certainly thank the Conservative group and the Cornish MPs if they got or helped us in our ambition to get the relocation of a government department down to Cornwall. We've been trying to do it for years and we've been unsuccessful. So when we have actually something that goes above and beyond the promises, and as promises they should be guarantees. You know, they were made in good faith, I hope. They were certainly taken in good faith, and now it's a real job to hold the government and the Prime Minister to those promises. That doesn't warrant thanks from me, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Gibbons, please.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to add a little bit on Wave Hub to what Councillor Dwelly has said already. There is considerable progress in identifying potential investors into Wave Hub from very big players, both in this country and abroad, and their proposals are being assessed very thoroughly by officers. It's hoped that by the end of this calendar year, a decision or recommendation from them, and then a decision by the Wave Hub shareholder board on the preferred candidate. I think it is very exciting and very good news for Cornwall that we've got some major players taking an interest in this area and taking forward the proposals for Wave Hub in the broadest sense in the future.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gibbons. So I've got Councillor Rushworth next. If we haven't got anyone indicating who hasn't come in yet, then I'll go back to Councillor Harrison-Taylor. Councillor Rushworth, please.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Dwelly and Councillor Gibbons has answered really my main question, which was how is the sale of the Wave Hub going on, and I'm really pleased to hear that it's going very successfully. So, but because of that, the 600 million, the 600,000 pounds that you ask into, or you're going to vote on, how is that going to be used? Is that going to be an incentive to the people who are buying it, so that they're going to be able to kickstart forward, or are you going to use that in the overall picture of developing offshore wind around the country, which I think is a good ambition, but that's just peanuts in the overall cost of R&D in that operation. And I think it would have been far better to do a tax-free zone like they have at Manchester Airport and all over Europe, where innovation can take place. And I find it surprising that you want to push all this, but without giving Cornwall a chance to attract the companies that will provide the R&D in conjunction with a zone at Falmouth and Newquay Airport. But you seem reluctant to do that when that is a golden opportunity to attract the jobs that you want to attract to Cornwall and make us the leader in renewable energy. Thank you.
Thank you. I wasn't aware there was a tax-free zone all over Europe. That would be a very different Europe.
Leader, there are 40, and I sent you
all over Europe.
all over Europe. Yeah, it's not just, and they're not free ports, they're tax-free zones, and that's what. But
it's okay.
Same as the same thing.
You said all over Europe.
They are. I'll send you a list.
If you listen, Councillor Rushworth, you said tax-free all over Europe. You didn't say there were tax-free zones all over Europe.
I meant tax-free zones.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Harris.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Dwelly, for your comment, for your response. A written answer, please. I would like to understand what the ITI board is, because I'll admit I've never heard of it. And just listening to Councillor Ethel Gibbons very quickly, he mentioned an investor in WaveHub. At the same time, we were talking about a buyer for WaveHub. So are we talking about an investor in WaveHub, a buyer in WaveHub, either, both, or a mixture? Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Taylor, please.
Thank you, Leader. Just getting my camera on. Thank you. Another question, please, if I may. It's about the WaveHub. I would like to know what's going to be happening about the copper cabling that is obviously considered as part of the restructuring and is obviously listed in the decommissioning document. There's quite a lot of money tied up now in that cable. What are the plans for the recovery? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dwelly, please.
Yes, thank you for those. Councillor Rushworth, the money you were asking about wouldn't go as an incentive to the buyer. It would be used very much for WaveHub Limited or any successor to that company to work up exactly the ambitious offshore wind potential for Cornwall that we talked about. And I think basically there is a reasonably good amount of money in there, and that will help. Freeport isn't on the agenda today. We'll no doubt come back to that, but I do genuinely hear what you're saying about that, Stephen, and I'm sure we'll have a more substantial reply for you in due course, but it's not on today's agenda. Councillor Harris, the wonders of the ITI board. Well, the Integrated Territorial Investment Board is a sort of compromise between what other parts of the country get in terms of leading EU funding. So, and Whitehall. So what we have in London, for example, is a greater control, or in Wales or in Scotland. They are the accountable bodies, those governments or the Greater London Authority, to actually deliver the EU fund direct with the EU, rather than government being completely in control of it. Here in Cornwall, we lost some control after the Objective 1 programme, and we've ended up with this sort of halfway house. It's a very complicated thing, and it's not my favourite meeting because there's the amount of paperwork you get is absolutely phenomenal. But it's a mixture of people on a form of a board, a committee of all sorts of different key people, giving a view on what should be funded on behalf of Cornwall. And what we've asked for in our devolution proposals to government is that we beef that up and turn it more into the equivalent of what, say, Greater London has. Without going deep into this at this point, the current indications from government are that we'll not even have the ITI board, and that Whitehall officials will work out what to fund. I hope that isn't the case, I really do, and I know MPs don't want that to happen, and we will work with them to avoid that. But to be clear, in an ideal scenario, we're not just talking about having at least £100 million a year. If we want to level up, it would be more than that, as I've already said, but we would also have Cornwall support, because we know best how to make this money work. And even if we don't get the money that Boris Johnson pledged, and it looks like we won't, I hope I'm wrong, then it's much better that we spend the money with local control, because we know how it will go furthest in Cornwall. I think we can all agree on that. But do look up the Integrated Territorial Investment Board and enjoy. Councillor Taylor, thank you. Copper cabling, I simply don't have an answer to that, but I'll happily get you an answer to that, and I hope you don't mind if we can get that to you in writing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dwelly. So good discussion on that. We've had it proposed and seconded, so Democratic Services Officer, if we can move to the vote, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'll take the vote by roll call. Please confirm whether you vote for, against or abstain from the proposal. Councillor Jeff Brown.
For.
Councillor Tim Dwelly.
For.
Councillor Mike Eathorne-Gibbons.
For.
Councillor Julian German.
For.
Councillor Edwina Hannaford.
For.
Councillor Sally Hawken.
For.
Councillor Andrew Mitchell.
For.
Councillor Rob Nolan.
For.
Councillor Adam Painter.
For.
And Councillor Rob Rochell.
For.
Thank you. I can confirm that all members have voted unanimously for the recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Louise. So I'm intending to go through the agenda. We're making reasonable progress. We'll see how much debate there are on the following 3 items, but if we can get through the agenda by around 1 o'clock, then I think we'll do so. If there's more debate than that, then we'll take a break for lunch. So the next agenda item is agenda item number 10, the empty home compulsory purchase order. Councillor Mitchell to lead, please. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Leader. I'm just struggling to bring my notes up a second. Apologies.
No problem. It's the joys of the IT.
Yeah, they're coming. I think. Know how it feels, particularly if it was a Monday morning, but not so much on a Wednesday. Here we go. Lovely. So thank you. The empty home compulsory purchase order for the Red Roof property. So bringing empty homes back into use is a cabinet priority because they are a wasted resource and have adverse impacts on communities. Our empty homes policy, our empty homes plan supports resolution of most cases through engagement with owners, but also enforcement action, including compulsory purchase where necessary. Many empty properties have been brought back into use by the empty homes team and performance is on target, but greater effect is desired and therefore we are working to boost delivery. The proposal is to progress compulsory purchase of a long-term empty residential property and associated land in Red Roof, which is the cause of significant problems and community concerns. Apart from being a wasted resource, the property is dilapidated, substantially overgrown and attracting fly tipping. The registered owner is understood to be long deceased, but despite investigations, the empty homes team have been unable to confirm or engage with any other interested party. As well as resolving the specific case, firm and visible action should also act as a disincentive to owners keeping other properties empty, and therefore it is anticipated that the benefits will be significant and hopefully widespread. Red Roof is a key settlement town with an evident long housing need, and the aim is to facilitate bringing the empty property and associated land back into habitable use, while also alleviating associated problems and community concerns. Sufficient capital and revenue budgets exist to cover acquisition and process costs. Whilst there are potential risks, the most significant being that we could acquire the property but be unable to utilise or dispose of it in future. These are considered to be low and continuing appraisals provides a safeguard. If the process were to be aborted, some irrecoverable legal and other costs would result within the budget. If no action is taken, the condition of the property and land will further deteriorate, compounding existing problems. Given persistent complaints and that the community expectations are high, the council risks reputational damage if it fails to act, as well as a potential escalation of the complaint. Therefore, while some risks are identified, doing nothing is not considered an appropriate response. In relation to the comprehensive impact assessment, no significant risks or impacts have been identified. Rather, progression of the proposed action is considered to be proportionate and strategically justified in the public interest. The intention is to expedite this case while continuing to investigate and, where appropriate, seek separate cabinet authority to progress a succession of other priority properties as part of a wider programme, and priority cases are being reviewed with the aim of bringing forward tranches of other suitable cases during 2021. So I am happy to move the recommendations 1 and 2 as printed on page 278. 1. That the compulsory purchase and use or disposal of the specified long-term empty property and associated land as referred to in the appendices to this report for housing purposes be authorised and progressed. 2. That authority be delegated to the Strategic Director for Economic Growth and Development in conjunction with the portfolio holder for homes to further appraise and consider potential options for the use or disposal of the specified long-term empty property and associated land referred to in the appendices to this report following its purchase, and to determine and implement the most appropriate option. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Straightforward recommendations. We do have confidential supporting appendices, but I think given the nature of the recommendations, we won't need to go into those. Councillor Brown to second, please.
Thank you, Leader. This is a scheme which I was involved in its early stages during the last administration, and I'm pleased to second. Compulsory purchase orders should only be used as a last resort, and our private housing team continue to do an outstanding job in bringing empty homes back into use. But just occasionally this approach is required, both to remove a neglected site from an area and also to return it to effective use as a home, adding vitality to the local community. And I'm delighted to second. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Ellenbrook, I should know this. You may be the local member. Is that correct?
That is precisely and exactly who I am, Leader. Thank you. I just wanted to say very briefly a huge vote of thanks to, in particular, David Clough and his team. I have several sites in my division, as I'm sure other councillors do all over Cornwall, which are causing a problem for the community. And I am absolutely delighted with the way in which David's team have communicated with me, answered my questions, helped me, and also helped me to help my local residents who have concerns not only about this site but about other sites, because they are also supporting me and helping me with some other empty sites that I have in my division. So I think this is an excellent scheme, and I thank the officers very much for the way in which they have worked on this. It's not an easy thing to do, but I think in this case it is certainly the right thing to do. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ellenbrook. Appreciate that. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to endorse what Councillor Ellenbrook said. It's a really good move, but we do have some interesting laws in Cornwall, and they relate to the Duke of Cornwall, who has that right to retain the property of anyone who has died without a will or heir. So my question is, the compulsory purchase figure, obviously I don't want to know about the figure, but presumably if there's any money left over, that will go to the Duke of Cornwall, and I'm making the assumption that the Duke of Cornwall has been consulted about this potential acquisition that he has gained.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. So those laws, of course, reflecting a distinct constitutional position. Councillor Mitchell, if you'd like to respond to those two, please.
Yes, exactly, Leader, and that's the way the duchy works. Councillor Ellenbrook, as local member, thank you for confirming that the process has worked really well, and that you as local member have been involved along the whole process. And I know you have represented the community's concerns regarding getting something done with this property. And thanks to Councillor Taylor as well, who's spot on. My understanding is that, as you say, we haven't identified any heirs. So whatever price is paid will sit in a bank account ring-fenced at County Hall. and I don't know the length of period. An officer may, but as you say, rightly so, if after the legal statutory time, if nobody has come forward, then yes, our dear Duke will be inheriting whatever is in that bank account.
Thank you. So no one else has indicated. Delighted that we're bringing this forward, and compulsory purchase is never done lightly, but we will certainly be looking at how this progresses with the view of taking more of these decisions where they are required as a last resort. So thank you, colleagues. Democratic Services Officer, if we can move to the vote, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'll take the vote by roll call. Please confirm whether you vote for, against, or abstain from the proposal. Councillor Jeff Brown.
For.
Councillor Tim Dwelly.
For.
Councillor Mikey Thorne-Gibbons.
For.
Councillor Julian German.
For.
Councillor Edwina Hannaford.
For.
Councillor Sally Hawken.
For.
Councillor Andrew Mitchell.
For.
Councillor Rob Nolan.
For.
Councillor Adam Painter.
For.
And Councillor Rob Rothschild.
For.
Thank you. I can confirm that all members have voted unanimously for the recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you, colleagues. So agenda item number 11, the Clean Air for Cornwall Strategy 2020 to 2025. Councillor Nolan, please.
Thank you, Leader, for the opportunity to speak on the Clean Air for Cornwall Strategy 2020-2025. Clean air is essential for life, health and the environment and the economy. Air quality in Cornwall is predominantly very good, but pockets of poor air quality persist in certain areas caused by harmful levels of nitrogen dioxide, NO2 gas emissions, mainly due to vehicular traffic, as my colleague Councillor Brown referred to earlier on. Poor air quality is harmful to health, particularly affects the most vulnerable in our society and can exacerbate asthma, increase hospital admissions and mortality. Poor air quality shortens lives, and it's been estimated there are over 200 people in Cornwall that die prematurely each year due to the exposure to poor air quality in relation to small airborne particle matter less than 2.5 microns. The government's Clean Air Strategy 2019 calls for the need to deal with all sources of air pollution that cause harm, and the new Clean Air for Cornwall Strategy 2020 to 25 has been updated to take this into account. We will work to improve air quality by helping individuals and organisations understand how they could reduce their contribution to air pollution, showing how this can help them protect their families, colleagues and neighbours. This includes actions to reduce harmful air quality emissions in the home. For instance, we know that burning damp, unseasoned wood is a cause for elevated fine particulate matter. The new Clean Air for Cornwall strategy replaces the one approved by Cabinet in 2017 and highlights many successes the Council has achieved working with partners and communities over the past 3 years. We have innovative and exciting plans going forward to ensure good air quality for our communities. It's important to note that the actions being taken to address air quality management areas where air quality is poor and exceeds national air quality objectives are working. In the 9 air quality management areas, Poole, Camborne, Reduce, Bodmin, Tidderford, St Austell, Gunnis Lake, Truro, Camelford, Grampound and Launceston, we have seen a reduction in NO2 levels in 2019 compared to 2018. Bodmin, St Austell and Camelford each showed no exceedances in 2019, and our planning and transport, including active transport, safe cycle, walkway networks, policies, along with other efforts, are proving to be effective. Whilst we are calling on everybody to do their bit, a behavioural change is needed from all concerned to minimise air quality impacts. For instance, to be less reliable on car usage for short trips. 23% of trips by car are less than 1 mile in distance. Cornwall Council is setting a good example for others to follow, including procurement policies that consider air quality impacts, low emission fleet vehicles, providing staff with technology to minimise trips to offices to carry out administrative work. Air quality improvement positively benefits climate change and supports the ambitions for Cornwall to become carbon neutral by 2030. The new strategy is aligned with the Cornwall Plan for 2050, that no one in Cornwall has to breathe unclean air ambition by 2050. The report presented to you today follows the consideration of the new Clean Air for Cornwall strategy 2020 to 2025 by the Neighbourhoods Overview and Scrutiny Committee at its meeting on the 1st of October 2020, when they recommended that 1. The Clean Air for Cornwall strategy 2020 to 2025 be approved and endorsed, subject to the inclusion of the points raised as detailed in the minutes and the recording of the Neighbourhood Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting on the 1st of October 2020. 1. The Cabinet robustly lobby for a fairer proportion of the Clean Air Fund in order to help facilitate a more ambitious active travel network at a faster pace. Yeah, I've just noticed that I went from 1 to 3. So that last one was 2. Number 3, the Cabinet recognises the ambition of installing 66 more charging points over the next 3 years is an inadequate response to meeting the national policy around the phasing out of new diesel and petrol cars by 2040. With regard to recommendation 1, the strategy has been amended to include points made by the committee. And with regard to recommendation 3, in addition to the existing 205 public electric charging points already installed across Cornwall, it has now been established that since reporting to scrutiny, there has been a significant update in that at least another 150 charge points are proposed, not the 66 that was reported to scrutiny, to be installed over the next 5 years, giving residents and visitors more opportunity to make use of electric vehicles without range anxiety. I hope you will agree that the Council has been successful in its combined efforts to maintain good air quality, and that you will support the new strategy aims, plans and the pathways to success outlined therein. I commend the recommendation that the Clean Air for Cornwall Strategy 2020 to 2025 be approved. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nolan. Councillor Hawkins, second, please.
Thank you, Leader. Poor air quality is a subject of high national and local interest and is known to be a significant concern for public health. The benefits of an effective strategy in terms of ensuring public health and well-being and protecting our environment are unquestionable, and I should like to second Councillor Rowan's proposals for Cabinet to approve this new strategy. I've got a bit of help.
Yeah, no, that's very nice. It's very nice. We all need a bit of help in our lives. Thank you very much, Councillor Hawkins. Some Cabinet members have indicated to come in. Councillor Painter first, please.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, just a quick comment. I would, endorse the recommendations and do fully support them. Being a councillor that does drive an electric car, I do think that's important to decarbonise and clean up our vehicle emissions, and certainly getting more charge points will be very helpful across Cornwall. Although I think people forget that the vast majority of properties in Cornwall can install their own charge point. So effectively, you have your own petrol station or diesel station at your home, so you can always leave with a full tank, which is the benefit of electric motoring. But equally, as a councillor who has part of my division, although extremely rural and a fairly rural town, we do have an air quality management zone, as Councillor Nolan pointed out. So Launceston, there is an issue with traffic and certainly movements, mainly of larger traffic and lorries. But it is quite sad to see, really. We tend to think of our cities being clogged up with bad air quality, but actually many of our small towns and even some of our villages are afflicted by really poor air quality that will affect everybody's health, but especially young people breathing in those sort of fumes. So it is a serious issue and something that Cornwall has been taking very seriously, and certainly something we've been taking seriously. So I do thank officers for bringing this forward, and it is very important. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Chairman, you were.
Right. Thank you. Councillor Hannaford, please.
Thank you, Leader. I don't have an electric car. I would quite like to have one, but my contribution is that I've just stopped driving, so I try to use public transport. So as the portfolio holder has highlighted, this strategy should be viewed alongside the Cornwall Carbon Neutral Action Plan to help us achieve the aims of this strategy. The action plan is currently going through a refresh, but it's clear reducing reliance on fossil fuel for transport will feature strongly, because we know that transport contributes about 25% of our carbon emissions, as well as poor air quality and the subsequent health issues. I would like to draw your attention to page 323, where there is a reference to Cormac replacing 10% of its fleet to non-fossil fuel alternatives by 2023 and its entire fleet by 2030. That's part of its efforts to decarbonise and remove those harmful particulates. Our recent investment to double the number of EV charging points across Cornwall will also help respond to actually quite a high take-up in Cornwall for ultra-low emission vehicles. The positive climate change decision-making wheel on page 322 demonstrates the multiple benefits from taking climate change actions as we balance the impacts on our planet, but also on people, so we can improve air quality for residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hannaford. So first group of 3 questions from Councillor Taylor, Fairman and Monk. So Councillor Taylor, please.
Thank you. My question, please, is thank you for the report. Who's actually going to collate the data across Cornwall and come up with the high pollution risk areas, please?
Thank you. Councillor Fairman, please.
Thank you, Leader. And I'm speaking as Vice Chair of NOSC this morning, this afternoon. So just wanted to thank you very much for putting this really important item on the agenda. I'd like to thank Councillor Nolan for reading out all the recommendations from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. And I just want to make 2 points, is that bearing in mind Councillor Dwelly's point about per capita share of government funding, we received 3 million of the government's £500 million Clean Air Fund, which is not a fair share for Cornwall, so we need to keep lobbying for that. And of course, when we said the number of charging points was inadequate for the ban of petrol and diesel by 2040, the goalposts have already moved. And if we need to protect our visitor economy and make our easier for our residents, the emphasis on car charging ports cannot be overemphasised. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Monk, please.
Thank you, Leader. Just following on from Councillor Taylor's point, once we've established where these really poor air quality areas are, how will interventions be put in place and what will happen if areas aren't improved? Just how it's all going to be monitored and keeping an eye on that. And I think with regards to replacing our existing, or Cormac's existing fleet, and trying to encourage the take-up of electric or fossil-free fuel cars or vehicles, just to keep an eye on how much value for money we're getting, and we don't just sort of rush into buying them when the better and more value. Other vehicles may offer better value in a very short time scale from now. So I'm just a little bit concerned that we don't just throw tons and tons of money at it. And with regards to charging points, it's a great idea that we're going to get a load of 150 charging points, but I'm just wondering about the strategies for where we put these charging points. I know previously we seem to have charging points popping up in sort of random places, the odd one in the corner of a car park or in the corner of a field we've got really newly that's sort of not even in the car park. And I'm just wondering whether we should take a more strategic look at 150 car charging points and put them in a grouping together to future-proof the actual need for the actual requirements of people who are going to be using electric vehicles. If you can only charge one every 20 minutes, for instance, if you've got 10 in a row, that on a bigger piece of land, it would allow more vehicles to sort of, almost like a petrol filling station, but that's just got charging points, rather than just putting them piecemeal across the county in areas that we own, because it's convenient for us to distribute them like that, when I'm not 100% certain that's probably the right way of distributing the charging points. But other than that, yeah, great piece of work, and I support the work that Councillor Nolan's put into this.
Thank you. So my recollection is that the strategy for where charging points were put was to do with the volume of transport of car usage in those areas. So Councillor Nolan, if you'd like to come in on those three questions, the strategy for where car charging points, it may not be within your portfolio, so I'm not sure if you can answer that, but over to you.
Thank you, Leader. For Councillor Taylor, it's we monitor the air quality management areas. We record it. It's us. I'm not sure I caught a question from Councillor Fairman. He was just glad that we've taken on board the recommendations of NOSC, and we're very happy to do so. He mentioned the electric cars. I'd emphasise bicycles, though, the electric bikes. We haven't mentioned very much, and they're not to be left out of it, with 23% of car journeys being less than a mile. And I've had the loan of an electric bike to go. County Hall is a mile from me, and I can confirm that an overweight, over 60-year-old person can quite happily get to County Hall up a steep hill without too much trouble. I think you might not be able to afford an electric car, but electric bikes are very useful. Councillor Monk makes a series of good points there. I will get back to you with details on the strategy, but this is one of those things that's evolving. You mentioned like a petrol station, and I saw a petrol or a charging station has opened somewhere up country where you just pull in and charge up relatively quickly. It's an evolving thing. I noticed supermarkets are putting the charging points in. Is there an overall strategy across Cornwall for how this works? Or are we just doing our own thing? That's a very good question. I will come back to you, Councillor Monk, on more details on that. But it's one of those things that's evolving away. Can we future-proof it? It's moving a bit quickly for us, but I'll come back to you with more detail on that.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, portfolio holder for transport, might have some detail to share. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I can confirm that you're correct, that the strategy is looking at the key routes and volume of traffic in particular. The other area that's going to be considered is where it's extremely difficult for personal EV points, because a lot of our housing in our towns was constructed long before roads and vehicles were considered as essential. So it can be very difficult, particularly where terrace houses front onto a road. So we'll be looking at supporting areas like that. Detailed locations are actually yet to be agreed, but I'd also refer to the comments made by Councillor Painter about commercial delivery of EV charging points as well, and point out that Tamer Bridge and Toy Pump Ferry have just opened 2 in their car park on the Plymouth side of the bridge.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. So no one else has indicated, in which case we've had it proposed and seconded. Democratic Services Officer, if we can move to the vote, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'll take the vote by roll call. Please confirm whether you vote for, against, or abstain from the proposal. Councillor Jeff Brown.
For.
Councillor Tim Dwelly.
For.
Councillor Mike Ethorne Gibbons.
For.
Councillor Julian German.
For.
Councillor Edwina Hannaford.
For.
Councillor Sally Hawken.
For.
Councillor Andrew Mitchell.
For.
Councillor Rob Nolan.
For.
Councillor Adam Painter.
For.
And Councillor Rob Rotchell.
For.
Thank you. I can confirm that all members have voted unanimously for the recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. So we're moving on then to the last item on the agenda, number 12, the A39 Atlantic Highway Camelford Bypass submission of outline business case. Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you, Leader. This report seeks approval to submit an outline business case to the Department for Transport for an updated scheme design. Latest design alignment to be safeguarded, and delegation sought to progress land negotiations and the release of local contribution for the scheme development. The A39 Atlantic Highway Scheme has been identified as a priority scheme by the Peninsular Transport Sub-Regional Transport Body for implementation through the Department for Transport Major Road Network Programme 2020 to 25. In fact, this is the only major road network scheme presented through the Sub-Regional Transport Board from Cornwall. Cabinet has been previously supported the submission of a strategic outline business case, supported in principle by a local contribution of 6.5 million. The submission of the outline business case represents the next major milestone in this project. Following a review of options previously considered and consultations undertaken in early 2020, a revised scheme design is being proposed as the basis of the outline business case. Fundings submitted to the Department for Transport. The scheme shown in Appendix 1 is an improvement upon the previous 2005 alignment, taking on board the feedback from the 2020 stakeholder and community consultation, incorporating latest highway design guidance and environmental designations, and in line with the development aspirations of the Camelford Neighbourhood Plan. The proposed outline business case alignment supersedes the 2005 scheme and as such needs to be formally safeguarded against development whilst the scheme itself is being progressed. The scheme comprises a new 4-kilometre bypass that will significantly improve journey times and resilience of the strategically important major road network and remove around 80% of traffic from Camelford High Street. Supported by town centre complementary measures, this scheme presents an opportunity to deliver a long-held aspiration for the regeneration of Camelford and addresses the long-standing air quality management areas. The total estimated cost of the scheme is 48.17 million. This will be funded by 41.59 million from the Department for Transport, subject to the approval of the outline business case, and 6.59 million local contribution from the Council's Capital Finance Reserve. There are still several stages for the scheme to navigate through, but approval of the outline business case by the Department of Transport would represent a major milestone achieved. Moving forward, it's recommended that the Cabinet provides all necessary approvals and delegations to enable the scheme development work to continue in order to ensure the planning application is submitted in the autumn of 2021 and to allow negotiations with landowners to continue throughout the spring and summer of next year. In order to progress these negotiations, the Council will seek to acquire land by agreement, but have the ability to revert to compulsory powers if necessary, and I would stress that that would be as an absolute last resort. Crucially, whilst we wait to hear whether the outline business bid has been successful, it's recommended that the local contribution is released to maintain momentum in developing the project. Subject to planning permission, statutory side road orders and the land acquisition process going smoothly, plus a final business case to the DFT, construction could start on the scheme in spring 2023, advanced clearance in winter 2022, and the whole scheme be open to traffic in late spring, early summer 2024. The report details the latest position with the scheme and seeks the necessary approvals to progress the Atlantic Highway A39 scheme in line with the Department for Transport Major Road Network programme. So recommendation 1 formally safeguards the latest design alignment and adjacent corridor, superseding the 2005 scheme. Recommendation 2 seeks the delegated authority to progress land negotiations by agreement and approval in principle for the CPO. Recommendation 3 seeks approval to submit outline business case to the DFT for 41.59 million, funding supported by 6.59 million local contribution for total scheme costs of 48.17 million. Recommendation 4, subject to the Department for Transport programme entry, the subsequent preparation and submission of a planning application and the other statutory orders required to progress the scheme. And recommendation 5 is to full council, allowing the scheme to release the local contribution to progress the development in the interim. And I'm afraid I've got, I think, the longest set of recommendations today. Recommendation 1, that the preferred route identified in the report is formally safeguarded against future development. The extent of the safeguarding includes the proposed route alignment within the area of land edged in red on the plan included in Appendix 1 to the report. It should be noted that the proposed design alignment supersedes the 2005 scheme alignment shown in Appendix 2 to the report, and as such the current safeguarding arrangements are superseded by the new scheme. Recommendation 2, that authority be delegated to the Strategic Director for Economic Growth and Development in consultation with the portfolio holder for transport and the monitoring officer and Section 151 officer to A, secure control by agreement or acquire all land and rights needed to implement the delivery of the A39 Atlantic Highway (Camelford Bypass improvements as set out within this report), and B, in the event that control by agreement has not been secured for all required land and rights needed to implement the A39 Atlantic Highway (Camelford Bypass) have either not been acquired within a timescale necessary to facilitate the Council's programme, to take all necessary steps to prepare for making of a compulsory purchase order using powers sections 239, 240, 246, 249, 250 and 260 of the Highways Act 1980 and the Acquisition of Land Act 1981 to prepare and present further report to Cabinet to enable Cabinet to consider and approve the case for making a compulsory purchase order in respect of any of the said required land and rights, with a view to any such compulsory purchase order being made and submitted to the Secretary of State for confirmation as soon as possible after the Cabinet decision to make the order. Recommendation 3, that the submission of an outline business case for a preferred route to the Atlantic Highway Camelford Bypass to the Department for Transport on the basis of the alignment illustrated in Appendix 1 to the report, seeking 41.59 million from government, supported by local contribution of 6.59 million to fund the 48.17 million scheme, be approved. 4, subject to the Department for Transport supporting the outline business case and the scheme achieving programme entry, that A, the preparation and subsequent submission of planning application anticipated in autumn 2021 for the scheme based on a final design development from the alignment illustrated in Appendix 1 to the report, be approved. B, that authority be delegated to the Strategic Director for Economic Growth and Development in consultation with the portfolio holder for transport for the preparation and subsequent submission of the necessary side road orders to the Department for Transport for the changes to the local road network and private accesses to accommodate the scheme. And finally, a recommendation to full council in order to maintain project delivery in line with the major road network programme, that the A39 Atlantic Highway budget in the capital programme be uplifted by 6.59 million to reflect the Council's local contribution funding approved in principle by Cabinet on the 24th of July 2019. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Well done going through all of those recommendations. Councillor Rothschild, second, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'm glad I didn't have to read the recommendations out. Perhaps unsurprisingly, I'm more than happy to second this proposal. At Cabinet in July, the decision was made to provide the local authorities' contribution to the scheme, and today we're looking to the next step in that process. I spoke at length in July about the benefits of this scheme as both portfolio holder and division member, and I'll now just give the headlines. Improved safety through Camelford and the A39 approaching the town. Reduced journey times for traffic access in Camelford. Improved journey time reliability on the A39. The unlocking of development and employment opportunities in and around Camelford. Immediate improvement in air quality in Camelford by reducing the number of vehicles entering the town, including HGVs, and removing congestion. Camelford is already an air quality management area. Improved quality of life for residents and to provide an alternative route to the A30 during road closures. Councillor Brown had already addressed some of the concerns around the proposal, and I am clear that the scheme has overwhelming support from residents of the town, the business community and the town council. Significant work has begun with the support of officers from Cornwall Council, the town council, local businesses and residents to create an innovative and dynamic strategy for the town post-bypass, which will give the town a very substantial boost in an area that has suffered from significant underinvestment for many years. Thank you.
thank you, Councillor Rothschild. No indications from Cabinet, so Councillor Fairman, please.
Thank you, Leader. So I went to school in Camelford. My family farm used to bank in Camelford. We went to the dentist in Camelford. And over the years, Camelford has lost many services. And during that time, it's also seen a bit large increase in the amount of Hgv traffic that's rumbled through the town, which has made it unattractive for new services to be located there. So I think it won't just regenerate Camelford Centre. It will help the whole wider area. There are 17 parishes, rural parishes, in the Camelford network area, and they would all benefit by having a lively and vibrant town centre in Camelford as a focal point. My specific point will be regarding on page 372, and Councillor Brown will perhaps remember walking with me from Delabole to Camelford, assessing the unsuitability of the pedestrian routes along the minor road there for the school children. So I hope that as we take this scheme forward, he will keep the cycling and walking connections that might be possible through to Delabole top of the list of added benefits as the scheme progresses. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. No one else has indicated, so I'll go straight back to Councillor Brain, please. Councillor Brain.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. And I well remember a very pleasant morning spent walking from Delabole to Camelford with Councillor Fairman. What I can reassure him is that there are a significant number of complementary measures around the development of this scheme. They won't just apply to Camelford Town Centre, they will apply to the outline areas as well. So hopefully some of that funding will be directed to the area of Delabole.
Thank you. So I'm just giving a moment for anyone else who wants to indicate on this important scheme, but obviously uncontroversial and with cross-party support. So no one else has indicated. So then Democratic Services Officer, if we can move to the vote, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'll take the vote by roll call. Please confirm whether you vote for, against or abstain from the proposal. Councillor Jeff Brown.
For.
Councillor Tim Dwelly.
For.
Councillor Mike Easthorne-Gibbons.
For.
Councillor Julian German.
For.
Councillor Edwina Hannaford.
For.
Councillor Sally Hawken.
For.
Councillor Andrew Mitchell.
For.
Councillor Bob Nolan.
For.
Councillor Adam Painter.
For.
And Councillor Rob Rothschild.
Most definitely for.
Thank you. I can confirm that all members have voted unanimously for the recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Louise. And I can confirm that I don't have any other business that the Chairman considers to be of urgency. So just as I said in my Leader's announcements, to wish everyone a happy Christmas and look forward to seeing you all in the new year. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Have a happy Christmas. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.